Is there anything better? Let me ask you. I said the other day, Jimmy, that like this was the best time of year in the sports calendar because everything's overlapping.
Right.
The answer would be yes, there are things better because like the month of May, Carb Day Friday is better, admittedly. But there's something about, though, the weekend when you know all of a sudden like the leaves are going to start to turn, it's a little bit crisp out, the weather's beautiful, the sun's out, football's big time, baseball's getting underway in the playoffs, and most importantly, you know what tomorrow is. Eddie, you know what tomorrow is, right? I know I can trust you on this one. Not to say I can't, Jimmy.
I mean, you can't, but
it's the 7th. It's Saturday.
Well, aside from that, there's an event. Work with me here.
Wiener dog races.
Yes.
Bingo, baby.
By the
German
way,
Fest tomorrow, 1 to 5, out in front of the Athenaeum, the Wiener dog races.
How did it go last night?
What's that?
How did it go last night with Derek Schultz?
It was good. We actually were, you know what, last night, thank you, Eddie. Derek Schultz and I were asked to be the co-MCs for an event for Family Promise, which is a tremendous organization that takes essentially families that have been displaced or due to a number of circumstances are homeless, and it used initially churches, temples, and different non-denominational religious housing to give temporary housing to people until they can get on their feet. And then when COVID happened, you couldn't put people together in groups, and so thanks to the courtesy of different apartment complexes in town and other such areas, they've been able to then provide housing for families through different apartment complexes, like I said, in housing areas around Indianapolis. And so it is the organization that facilitates all of that. Their big fundraiser was last night. We had a great time. It was a wonderful event up at, I believe it's called Black Iris, but up on 116th Street. And raised a ton of money, which is good. They had a huge dessert spread, and the whole deal was each table had to privately auction on who got the first pick to go up and get the dessert for the table itself.
It's a great idea.
So a couple $100,000 raised,
nice.
which was great.
Did you agree? Did you agree with Derek Schultz's sentiment that 2 MCs is overkill?
Well, we got up there, and Derek said when we got up on the little lectern, and Derek started out by saying, listen, let's be real. There's really only one major celebrity standing up here. To which I said, yeah, and actually everybody just assumes I'm the only one standing. So you are correct, actually. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun yesterday. And then got home, obviously saw the news about Dick Butkus when I was on the way to the event. And then last night watched the Bears pay the ultimate tribute. And finally, I'll tell you what, guys, we were ready. And this is what's so weird to me about the NFL. We were ready to just wrap up and throw away the career of Justin Fields. I wasn't necessarily. I'm not saying it, but, that was kind of the narrative, right? It looked like time had passed on him. And this is 2 games in a row where he's been pretty good, and he was really good last night.
The issue with that situation in Chicago, and this is kind of where I've stood on it before and where I still stand on it after the 2 back-to-back games that he's put together, is that just because the Bears are bad, and they're not a good team. Like we're 0-4 going in. They're now 1-4 through 5 weeks. They're not going to be a playoff team. And it looks like they're trending towards the Caleb Williams era. And maybe that still happens, but that could still be true. The Bears could still be a bad team, and Chicago would be making a mistake by getting rid of Justin Fields. And that statement might be too strong just yet, but back-to-back weeks, he's reminded the NFL world that he can play the position, that he's got some spice, some pizzazz to him, and if he does wind up being jettisoned from Chicago, I think there would be a long list of teams that would be inquiring about his services. I think he's a good gets thrown around so often, Jake, but he can play the position. Like there's flashes there where he can play it. Now, is it like Carson Wentz flashes where you're like, oh, there's some plays where that guy's awesome, and other plays where it looks like he doesn't belong on the field? I feel like there's still enough ups and downs to say that, but he's still super young, and he reminds you every so often that, yeah, I can play this position at a high level, and if Chicago wants to move on from me, give me a shot somewhere else, and I'm going to do fine.
Justin Fields would benefit from one situation, in my opinion, Give me 3 young quarterbacks off the top of your head. Like when I say young, I mean within the first 2 years. The quarterbacks that we think are good, but we still don't know for certain.
In the last 2 years,
Or 3.
do we put? I mean, Jalen Hurts maybe.
Okay. I mean, I'll put him.
I mean,
there.
he was an
Okay.
MVP candidate, but he's still within his first 3 or 4 seasons. I don't know that we think Kenny Pickett is good, but
Okay, that's a good one.
He's in
Kenny
that
Pickett. Okay.
conversation.
Okay. I mean, Hurts has been to Hurts. I think at this point you have enough body of work to say it's the guy, right?
Yes. So let's scratch him out. Put Justin Herbert there. This is year 3 or year 4 for him. I like Justin
but
Herbert.
I think we have enough body of work there to know
You
he's
think
the
so?
guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So Pickett is a really good one. Sam Howell.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, guys that like you're looking at and they're still clearly in the process of determining whether or not they are the guy.
Desmond Ridder.
Desmond Ritter's a good one. Okay. I mean,
So guys that
obviously-
really haven't proven anything just yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Guys that like they are still in the evaluation process. Okay. Of those guys, Justin Fields has a yin and a yang of where he was drafted.
Yeah.
The yin being he was drafted into a situation where they are really bad. He got the start essentially right away, and it's his franchise, et cetera, right? And the yang being they're really bad, and if it doesn't work out, I do think that his stock and his value doesn't drop as much as people would think, because I think there would be a narrative and an assumption by a lot of people that Justin Fields not working out was more on the Bears than it was Justin Fields. And I think there are a lot of teams that would look at it and go, I mean, if Baker Mayfield's going to get 7 chances, then Justin Fields, I think, is,
A worthy candidate as well. Yeah.
beyond that. I mean, I think the guy's really good. I just think that I think the sentiment would be from more teams than not if the Bears decided to part ways, which I don't know that they would do. But if they did, I think the sentiment would be, look, this guy can play, and they couldn't figure out how to take advantage of that or build around him.
The other name that would go on that list, but would be the best of all of them, I would argue, so maybe you would push him out, is apparently it's just his birthday today. How about that? Trevor Lawrence. He's 24. I think he's turned the corner of we know what he is now.
I would agree with that.
But he's in that same age range of class in terms of years in the NFL. This is what, year 3 for him, if I'm not mistaken?
Correct. But year 1, you almost have to throw out because he
Correct.
was with the biggest clown show ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that was a disaster.
Nightmare. Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, to me, his football genius, or and there's a really interesting piece from Zach Kiefer that I'm looking for. I browsed it real quick from The Athletic. I saw, excerpts from it, but I haven't sat down to read the whole thing, which I'm looking forward to doing. But Zach Kiefer went down to Jacksonville and talked to players, coaches, everything about Trevor Lawrence and what he means there. I think Trevor Lawrence gets a ton of credit in the fact that there are a lot of quarterbacks, Jimmy, a lot, that first year with that clown show of Urban Meyer and bars and coming back different from the team and trying to coach them like a college team and dissension among the locker. There are a lot of quarterbacks that would have wilted and folded them right there.
Career's over.
Correct.
You never recover from it.
Correct.
You're broken.
And actually, he was the adult in the room that they turned to get him out of it.
Yep.
Which is interesting. It is a Friday, though. Good afternoon to you on a fabulous-looking start to the weekend. My name is Jake Query. That is Jimmy Cook. Eddie Garrison here as well. It is Query and Company here on 93.5, 107.5. The Fan. As always, company consists of all of you. We appreciate and welcome all of you who have jumped on board and been hired in the company. Paul's the director of Giddiness. Derek is the director of Veteran Affairs. We've got like 19 women. The only 19 women that listen to the show are all chief financial officers, right? And we just continue. Yesterday we got a
JP.
That's right. He's the director of was it agriculture? What
No, because we had somebody else calling right before that said they were the director of agriculture.
See, I should write these down. That probably would help. I'm not a very good HR person, but we don't have an
the
HR
directory
department.
would really have been solidified by an HR department. I feel like a director of speed and EJ Speed, of course.
Director of speed.
Was
yeah,
he? Was JP the director of like Combine or something like that?
Yeah, that was
Yes, it was
Correct.
Combine. You gave him a CCO title.
because I'm going to go out to his farm and ride the combine with him.
Correct.
Yep.
I've always wondered, what does a combine do? It just does everything, right?
And then Sandra is our company nurse. So there's another one.
Now, have you had cough due to cold lately?
I have not.
Well, we've got that covered if you do. We just don't have an HR department to find out who pays the bill on it. That's our only problem. Jonathan Taylor was the big news yesterday, obviously, over the course of the day and heading into the weekend. You know, the more I thought about it, the more I had an epiphany. Okay?
All right.
And maybe I'm falling short in the job expectation. I'd be curious to see. I think people would agree with me on this, though. There is very little doubt in my mind in listening to Jonathan Taylor. And by the way, I have a new sound effect we're going to do for the translator. When an athlete talks, we're going to put it through the translator, and then I'm going to tell you what the athlete really meant.
Sure.
Okay? So I found the audio that we're going to use for our translator.
Is this proprietary tech you got working here?
This is another one of those things that at 2:11 and 15 seconds I had another epiphany.
Yep,
right?
Sure.
But when Jonathan Taylor talked, in paraphrase, what he said was the following. Okay, he basically said, "Look, I'm going to tell you that this was all about me getting healthy, but in reality, it was all about my finances getting healthy, and so I took a chance and took a leap to try to get my finances as healthy as possible." And it didn't work out for me. I kind of lost in that gamble. And I get it. And it's not easy. And it's tough to go back to the roulette wheel after you've lost like 3 times in a row and you're convinced that your number's still going to hit. But it's the reality. And the more that I thought about it and the more that like sitting back and looking at it and evaluating all of it, what I realized was that I have to play well still to get paid. It appears from other teams as well that because of the fact that there were questions about my health, they still need me to prove something. I don't buy that. I don't believe in that. I think that I've proven what I need to prove, but for whatever reason, other teams in the league and the Colts seem to think that I need to prove something. So I got to basically put my tail between the legs and come out here and play, but I can't say that exactly to you guys. So what I'm going to say is I'm here to help the team win. I'm here to win a championship, and I'm here to be a good soldier for this city because as long as I do those 3 things, my price tag is going to go up. So it's a symbiotic relationship here in terms of my finances. And I want to eventually get paid as an elite level running back. And if Indianapolis is the only franchise willing to do that, so be it. But if not, I am willing to go somewhere else and get the most money that I can get. That's what he meant. That's what he said. But what I have determined in my epiphany.
He's playing on Sunday?
I don't think he's going to play on Sunday.
Right.
Although it's starting to look more towards your favor.
My confidence is feeling good.
Yeah, it is starting to turn your way for sure.
Full participant yesterday in practice. That makes back-to-back days of those, even though I guess one was kind of speculation. But got to wait for the injury report today. I'm feeling good, though.
Jonathan Taylor is back out there again today. Ryan Kelly, DeForest Buckner, Quentin Nelson all practiced as well.
Ooh.
Bernard Ryman and Kwity Paye were back at practice. They are in the concussion protocol, but they were in red jerseys, so a non-contact practice for Ryman and Kwity Paye. And then Shaq Leonard was out at practice, did not participate in practice again today, so
Shaq's
not looking good for him.
He's missed a couple. So, yes, that seems to be tipping the scale towards you a little bit there, Jimmy.
But not your epiphany.
No, my epiphany was this. My epiphany was that it is probably our job. Not probably, it is our job to decipher what Jonathan Taylor is saying, to find out the true aspect and the true storyline of what's going on with Jonathan Taylor, to analyze what Jonathan Taylor's future means towards the Indianapolis Colts, and to find that answer for fans. And as much as I would like to be able to read through 7 different clues to find out exactly what's going on, and as much as fans rely on us to do it, the reality is that at this moment, now these things change on the dime, but at this moment, the answer is simple. And the answer simply is that Jonathan Taylor has his own mind on what his long-term financial status should be. The Indianapolis Colts have their own mind on what his financial status is. And there basically is a temporary truce of the two of them saying, you know what, let's just kind of let bygones be bygones and play through it. And it is our job as a result of that and for people of this town to say, cool, he's part of the team, and now we just start talking about him as a part of the 2023 Indianapolis Colts as opposed to speculating about whether or not he's going to be a member of the 2025 Indianapolis Colts. And so I think that fans at this point, in terms of the interpretations, in terms of the Freudian nature of it, in terms of the long-term aspect of it, in terms of the now, in terms of the locker room ramification, all of that stuff, we've talked about it since August. And frankly, I think there are probably a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm ready now to talk about the football aspect of Jonathan Taylor and what he can do between the tackles, not what he can do between the locker room doors. And so to me, that's what we do now. I think we have an obligation to people to say, okay, now it's time to talk football. And if there is news in terms of his negotiations, which I don't anticipate being the case, then we go there. Now, he may be traded. I don't think that's going to happen now. We thought that was going to happen. I think it would have happened by now. Maybe they're putting him out there to see what they can get for him and allowing him to display his skill so that they can trade him. I don't know that that's a possibility, or I don't know that that's the thought process.
I felt like it's not going to happen since the reports came out of what they were asking and the thought that they were hoping to get a first-round pick to kind of prove to him where his value was in the market. If the bar is a first-round pick for the Colts, then the next 25 days are going to be uneventful. But I'm with you, Jake. The reaction now should not be week-to-week speculation of, hey, I tell you what, maybe the Browns give him a call.
Yeah.
Maybe the Packers give him a call. It should be how he looks out there, how much of his struggles or success is Jonathan Taylor done, how much of it is the offensive line. Like, all those evaluations should be happening from this point forward versus, I tell you what, can you imagine if they were to get this guy for Jonathan Taylor? That's where the conversation should shift.
Speaking of the bar that's set, give me an underrated bar in Indianapolis you enjoy.
Oh,
like an off, your wife's gone for the weekend. Your buddy calls. He goes, "Hey, Notre Dame's playing tomorrow at 3:00. Like, let's go grab a beer and watch it somewhere." And you're like, "Yeah, but the only problem is there's always so many people, and I get nervous during the games." He's like, "Just find like a smaller joint where we can just go and get a couple of PBRs, watch the game." Where are you going?
I'm going to Fork and Ale.
Okay, Eddie.
I'm probably going to Shallows in Greenwood off 135.
Okay.
What about you?
I have a couple. There's a really good one. I think one of the hidden gems of Indianapolis, because it's just such a cool vibe. There's a place called 317 Burger in Broderpool. It's right across from kind of a catty corner from the firehouse. It used to be, way back in the day, it was, what was it called? Blue Point Oyster. I mean, I'm talking 30 years ago, next to Ambrosia. But it's just
Predates
a super cool bar.
Yeah.
Just a cool joint, cool spot. They got great quotes written on the wall. That'd be one of mine.
There's a place in I think it's off 106 called Root Burger Bar. I believe it's owned by the same that founded Scotty's.
Yeah, Roots, Scotty Wise's joint.
Yes,
Yep. I used to have one at 71st and Bedford as well. I love Scotty.
It's a nice spot.
Scott Wise is a great dude. I've known him for a long time. Been around his family, and he's got the nicest kids and nicest wife ever. So that's good. And their smash burgers are fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Delicious.
Fabulous. So that's a good place. I think tonight, I'm kind of craving tonight, and we go like probably once a month, every couple of weeks. You been to Kuma's Corner?
No, I'm not.
Oh, man, Fountain Square. They've got great burgers also. But I think the thing that is cool about it is they always have blaring. I mean, like really loud, total heavy metal rock, okay? Like I'm talking like Dokken is like the entry level of it, right? And Shannon Walsh, big-time headbanger, by the way.
Okay.
Also wanted to point out, in terms of weekend events, before we get to Joel A. Erickson's going to join us here coming up just about 10 minutes from now. We'll get heavy into the Colts conversation. There is the Heartland Film Festival's underway.
Okay.
A lot of conversation, rightly so, about Lionheart, the documentary of Dan Weldon, which I'll look forward to seeing. Obviously, I knew Dan Weldon pretty well, and Susie, and certainly covered the vast majority of his racing career and called races for him, and think the world of Dan and Susie as well. So I look forward to that film, and my understanding is it's extremely well done. In addition to that, there is also, in the Heartland Film Festival, a documentary about beatball and the Indy Thunder who of course are led by Darnell Booker, who's called this program, and you've probably heard him on different shows. He's an extremely proud and enthusiastic promoter of beep ball, which is baseball for the visually impaired. Have you guys ever tried it?
No.
So the way beep ball works is it's essentially a softball that's a beeping device. The pitcher is your teammate. So as opposed to with the opposing team, your teammate supplies the pitcher. And there are two bases that look essentially like tackling dummies in football. And when you make contact with the ball, there's somebody, a scorekeeper essentially, that pushes a button, and that randomly fires off a sounder to either of the two bases. One that would be first base as we know it, the other that would be third base as we know it. So when you hit the ball, you don't know if you are then running to the right or to the left, but you are, many of the batters are entirely visually impaired, but everyone wears a sleep shade so that it's an equal level of impairment for everyone, right? The fielders obviously also are in the same situation or disadvantage from a visual standpoint. So when you hit the ball, it's very simple. Your job is to get to the base before a fielder is able to find the ball based on the beeping sound and hold it above their head. If they do that, you're out. If they do not, you score a run. And it's just like regular baseball. Innings, outs, move forward. Indy Thunder, I've gone to several of their games out in Broad Ripple area. Totally fun to watch. Documentary about them on Heartland Film Festival as well. So certainly encourage people to watch that. Now, what did you do last night, Jimmy? Anything fun and exciting?
Watched some Thursday Night Football. 109 with it as always, but the overhit, like Eddie and I talked about yesterday, the Bears surprisingly carried that load. Like we mentioned, Jake, I thought that Washington would probably take care of that game pretty easily, and the fact that Chicago was able to dominate that pretty much from start to finish, although it did get a little scary towards the tail end before they sealed the deal. Thursday Night Football often gets labeled with bad matchups, and that's often pretty true, but last night was a fun matchup, albeit with two bad defensive teams.
Was it? Okay, now I tried to do your Amazon alternate viewing thing. Sure. I didn't obviously get to the game until midway through the third quarter because I was emceeing that event.
Right.
But two things here that number one, I couldn't get that.
Sorry.
When I moved, I did what you did. There's the little play button, and then to the side of it, there were other options. And when I did that, it just went to the same thing. But two questions I have here.
Okay.
Number one.
How long did you give it, by the way, after you did that? Like 30. You said it went to the same thing. Did you just wait like 10 seconds? Like, okay, this is the same, and flip back over?
No, I watched the
on?
whole game.
Okay.
Or it looked really dark. Was that my television? Like it looked visually, the field and the lighting looked dark yesterday.
Now that you say that, recollecting on it, I did think it was a little dark, but not to the point that like it stuck with me clearly.
Okay, secondly, and Bob Kravitz had mentioned this in one of his columns, and Bob's going to join us at 2:30 today. My absolute number one broadcast icon hero is Al Michaels, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
When you hear his voice, it's like, yep, this is big time. And his voice is just as smooth and as like Al Michaels is like the whatever, the Rat Pack of broadcasters.
Yes.
He's like the cool of Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis.
Indeed.
All wrapped into one, right? However, Dean Martin, all of them.
Fun fact.
But that was the first time that he was the broadcaster of the Cincinnati Reds?
That apparently he's never eaten a vegetable.
I saw that
Did
last
you see
night.
that?
That came out last night,
That
right?
popped up, on my feed last night.
He said that his mom, his mother was like 17 when he was born, and she never fed him vegetables, and so at this point I think he just is doing it. Why not, right?
I wonder if that would have worked for me as a kid. Mom, Al Michaels doesn't eat vegetables.
So he's never had a salad?
I guess. They offered up a carrot to him as an olive branch. Like, would you try a carrot? And he's like, that's not an easy vegetable to take down.
Right.
Which I was a little surprised by.
Well, I like the follow-up was, well, then how would you know that if you've never tasted it?
Yeah.
But last night was the first time that I have ever noticed where I'm like, man, like he sounds like he's slowing down. And I never thought I'd say that. I mean, understandably so. The man has, been doing it forever. He's a legend. But that was the first time that I thought it felt like he was like moving at 90 miles an hour and the game was at 100. Am I off base here?
He's had a couple of like minor slip-ups here and there, but I will be honest with you. Last night, it was on the second screen. So I had it on, but I wasn't like,
okay.
But next week, it's Chiefs Broncos. I'll be locked in and I'll let you know.
Listen, I absolutely love everything about Al Michaels. I mean, as a broadcaster, I I don't know him, obviously, but I think I told you the story, Jimmy, where several years ago, Monday Night Football was here in Indy. I was working at Channel 6, which was ABC. And when Monday Night Football was here in town, I was like the number 4 guy in the department. I mean, I was the grunt, basically. And they were doing an event down here on the Circle, and they needed someone to go in the limo to go pick up John Madden, Al Michaels, and Michelle Tafoya, to just escort them over and make sure and ride with them in the limo and make sure they knew where to go, like on the Circle, where the stage was, whatever. So they asked if I'd do it. And I'm like, heck yeah. So we go and it was funny because they were staying like 2 blocks away from the Circle. So it was a very short ride, but due to one-ways, it was a little bit longer. So we get in the car, we're riding, and Al Michaels says to me, now let me ask you a question. I go, okay. Because I'm like, I'm just going to sit here in the car, and like, it's not my job to talk necessarily, right?
Right.
John Madden rolled the window down and held his head out the window the entire time. Okay. Michelle Tafoya was very nice. Al Michaels says, I got a question for you. I said, okay. And he goes, now, is it the candle burning bright or the candle shining bright? In the words to Back Home Again in Indiana. And I said, well, actually, some say gleaming, some say burning, whatever. So we come up, he goes, okay, well, I need to know the line. So I'm teaching him the words to Back Home Again in Indiana, right? So we get to the event. He comes out on the stage, and they introduce him, and he immediately leads everybody in singing Back Home Again in Indiana, right? Like 2 years later, the Colts again have a home Monday Night Football game, and they're like, Jake, do you want to go do the same thing again with the same crew? Sure. So I go to the hotel. I'm waiting downstairs. I'm waiting for them to come down. They come down. Al Michaels walks right up to me and goes, Jake, the candle's burning bright. And he goes through the whole, and like immediately remembered my name, immediately remembered the lyrics, knew everything about it. We got in the car, and he's like, how are things? And he knew everyone's name at the station. And I'm like, okay, that's why this dude's a legend. John Madden, by the way, later on the second time, because he again held his head out the window. And I said, hey, do you want me to have them turn up the air conditioning? And he said, you know what? People think I'm afraid of flying. I'm not. I'm just claustrophobic. And that's why I don't fly, because I'm too claustrophobic. So anyway, that's my Al Michaels story. But
that's a validation story. It's like you've always heard, oh, that guy seems like a great guy.
Totally.
That's a validation
totally,
story.
man.
Yep.
And the dude just oozes cool, man. The dude sweats raindrops of coolness. Bottom line. Joel A. Erickson joins us next.
107.5 The Fan.
That is the demonic laugh of Joel Erickson, who is trying to heal the wounds of his Milwaukee Brewers getting swept right out of the National League, whatever round it is, playoffs.
Man, don't build toward it. Just go right for it.
That's right.
It's nice.
Well, I think Joel knows. I kind of like the Brewers. I think Milwaukee might be rising quickly as one of my favorite cities in the United States, for sure. Kind of a special place for me. So I think Joel knows that. But he joins us now, and player availability coming up here in just a couple of minutes, so we'll try to sneak in some time with him. Joel, first off, I'll get right to the meat of the matter. Jonathan Taylor, going to or not going to play on Sunday?
I still think he's going to. I don't know how much or in what capacity. I just feel like these guys come off of not playing all the time and end up playing. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just feel like he's going to play.
What's the best
running back? It's also running back. It's not like there's as much timing as receiver and stuff like that.
Well, what's the best non-Jonathan Taylor division read that you've gotten out of the injury report the last couple of days in terms of where the offensive line is trending?
I don't think Bernard Ryman is going to. I mean, he was out there today. I don't know for sure that I think he's going to be back. It seems like this year the team is being, and not just this team, but every team is being a little more careful with concussions. I keep thinking about Drew Ogletree being cleared but then inactive and then giving him another week. So I'm kind of leaning that way with him. Ryan Kelly might be back. Ryman obviously is huge because, the difference between him and Blake Freeland, I think, was pretty stark last week.
When it comes to the protocol, I understand it, Joel. I do. And I don't think that neurological injury is anything to take lightly at all. So I commend the NFL for probably what some people might see as almost like an aggressive handling of all of this, right? Or erring on the side of caution, I guess. But one guy this week, and I don't know that it's a concussion issue. I could be wrong. You're around it closer than am I, so shed light here. Shaq Leonard, when he was not getting a lot of reps last Sunday, Shane Steichen made it clear, like, no, he's fine. He's just, our rotation was such that he wasn't getting on the field a lot. Now he's been limited in practice. What is going on from a health standpoint with Shaq Leonard?
Yeah, he's listed with a groin injury. He was available, I think, yesterday when I was dealing with Taylor stuff, so I didn't actually go talk to him. I don't know, but he's dealing with a groin. I think the most telling thing though was earlier this week when Gus Bradley said that with Leonard, they're kind of hoping that he's full go and like really going in November, which he's probably played a few more snaps than that so far. But it also was sort of a telling quote. I mean, we're still a long ways away from November in terms of games. I don't know. I don't really know how to read everything other than he doesn't quite look like himself, or at least the previous version of himself. And maybe they're right. Maybe by the time you get back to November, he does look like that. But just kind of interesting that they said that. That was the first time they sort of kind of put it that plainly, that they didn't expect him to be fully back to who they expect him to be, or whatever that is, until November.
Joel Erickson with the Indy Star taking some time with us here on Query and Company. Joel, sticking with the injury portion of this conversation, DeForest Buckner, a limited participant on Thursday. It was clear that especially the run defense missed him on first, second down as he was used primarily in third down situations against the Rams. Where do you think we're trending in terms of if there's a snap count placed on DeForest or not this weekend?
Well, with Buck, you always assume that he's going to play more than maybe his injuries allow him to, and then adjust as accordingly. I think the thing that I'm interested in there is if he does have to play a smaller snap count again, I'd be curious to see if the rotation changes. I thought, Dayo Odengbo had a pretty nice game last week, and he's got the size and everything to play in there. And I wonder if maybe playing Dayo Odengbo or Eric Johnson, who's more of a nose tackle run stuffer on rundowns, is a better idea if Buckner can't go than playing Taven Bryan, who really struggled against the run last week.
Joel, what sort of things, this matchup has suddenly become more intriguing than probably we thought like in early September, right? When you were looking at the schedule and you're looking at games, you're like, the Tennessee game, I mean, it's two teams that are probably vying to stay within 2 games of Jacksonville, and then boom, here we are within the AFC South. So I'll begin with this. Do you think that the division right now is kind of wide open, A, because, a couple of those teams are more competent than we thought, or B, because Jacksonville has maybe even regressed from where they ended last year to the surprise of everyone?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. The Jaguars' offensive line has some issues, and I think Colts fans are pretty aware of how an offensive line having some issues can really change a team's projections really fast. And then I think, especially with the Colts, I'm not sure anybody really expected Anthony Richardson to be making a difference in a way that could win games this early. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think he's further along than I expected. I think maybe than the Colts expected, given the way they didn't address certain things like, the cornerback position this offseason. And, I just kept coming away from last week's game thinking, maybe if they'd made a move or two at corner or in the secondary, they might be 3-1 right now. And then if you're 3-1, you're talking about like, hey, we're making a playoff push. So I think that's part of it too. It's just Richardson and Stroud too with the Texans. Both of them are playing in a way that makes you wonder if those rookie quarterbacks are going to be better than expected. And if they are, then they're going to be their teams are going to be better than expected.
Another big question on the mind of Colts fans going into this weekend, and I think in the coming weeks, is with a potential Jonathan Taylor return, Joel, where does Zach Moss fit into things? I mean, there's no doubt he'll still be at least a complimentary back, but going into this matchup, I'm with you. I think that JT gets some amount of carries. I think he's going to play, but do you think this is a matchup where they might ease Jonathan Taylor in and Zach Moss might still have a split or maybe leading the majority of the carries?
I think it's possible, just given how much time. I think Taylor said it's been more than 290 days. So if he does play, I do think it's possible that he's kind of on a ramp up pitch count type thing. If he gets fully healthy, then I think Zach Moss is playing a backup role. Taylor's just more explosive,
Right.
But that might be a couple of weeks away, given how much time Taylor missed over the last year or so.
The dynamic of Jonathan Taylor, Joel Erickson is our guest from the Indianapolis Star. The dynamic of Taylor to me is interesting because once he's going full bore, if you will, how much I realize it from the running back position. We're looking at it from how big an acclimation is it for Jonathan Taylor to get back in there having missed time? Not a lot. But what about for Anthony Richardson? What nuances of having a back like that, a guy that's quicker to the hole, a guy that he's not, necessarily an out-of-the-backfield receiver and maybe not even a good enough blitz blocker. But what about for Anthony Richardson? Is it a bigger acclimation for Richardson than it is for Taylor?
So I've asked about zone read handoffs because I think we've all seen those go bad. I think that the team feels like, honestly, that these guys are good enough that Jim Goff-Cooter actually just kind of flat out said, these guys can pretty much handle that. They should be able to handle that. They're professionals. In terms of the passing game stuff with Taylor, he's at the very least he's at the same level of receiver and pass protector I think as Zach Moss. And then I think the interesting thing for me is how do defenses react? If you have a fully healthy Taylor and a fully healthy Richardson, if it was me right now, I would be going, hey, anytime Richardson is in a zone read situation, I'm erring on the side of Richardson because he can hurt us more. If Taylor's out there, then it kind of changes it, and that's the piece that I'm really interested in. Is does it? I mean, Richardson's had some pretty good lanes to run through lately. Just I think some of the design and stuff is helping that. But does it help it even more? Does it make Richardson's life a little bit easier just with being worried that running back could hit a home run with the ball?
Are we still a few weeks away before that tandem reaches what Colts fans have been excited about it potentially reaching in terms of how it could attack a defense? I feel like that was the buzz around the city the moment Anthony Richardson was drafted was, man, you pair him up with Jonathan Taylor and look out how you're supposed to scheme against that. Are we a few weeks away from seeing the full potential?
Probably. I mean, he's got to be on the field a lot, I think, to really get into that. And I think the team also has to sort of get a feel for, how he runs and stuff like that. I think you could probably see some of that stuff on tape, but I think you're probably a few weeks away from it. I think the other thing is the offense is probably still they're probably still learning a lot about Anthony Richardson, just in all facets of the game and how they can make it better. You think about the first year they had with Jalen Hurts there, they kind of scuffled for 2 months or so and then figured it out towards the end. I'm kind of expecting that to happen a little bit here with them learning Richardson as they go.
Joel, last thing here before we let you go, because I know the locker room's about to open up. In talking to the players, the things that they're looking at for Tennessee, the expectation they have of the Tennessee Titans, and what Tennessee they feel is going to try to do against them, they need to be prepared for is what?
Tennessee, their calling card is just the physicality. They're going to take advantage of mistakes. It's the same Tennessee team, and I think the players know that. You know you're kind of going into all games are physical, but this game is usually more physical than other ones. I think that's the biggest thing. Tennessee is kind of a weird team to look at right now because they're 2-2, and it's hard to get a read on them. But you kind of know how Mike Vrabel's teams are going to play, and I think the players are kind of expecting the same sort of physical battle that they're used to.
We'll let you get back to listening to the Violent Femmes and the Killers, which I know is your favorite duo now, Joel. Right?
Well, I'm listening to a lot of very sad stuff right now. I'm in mourning for the Brewers season for a little bit here.
I'll hear you. Once you get done with the Cure, we'll let you get back to the Violent Femmes and the Killers. How's that?
There you go. There you go.
Appreciate it, Joel.
See ya.
Joel A. Erickson of the Indianapolis Star. Colts getting ready to talk now, so final time, and we'll get kind of a better preview on who is in and who is out. Do you remember during elections? It's a dangerous topic to bring up.
A chill just went over the room.
That's right. Those things are all fake. During elections, I don't know what year this began. I certainly know it was the case in certainly the 16 election, maybe 12. I don't know. I think it was I'm not even going to say the outlet because it opens up for 50% of the people to send me things about how it's ridiculous that I would believe that outlet. A major media outlet came up with this little graph with a needle.
Uh-huh.
And as states would come in, the needle would then move from one candidate to the next in, kind of it looked like a fuel gauge. Right?
Yeah.
And it would, now we're leaning towards this candidate winning. And no, wait a minute, this state just reported in and the other candidate. So now the needle moves back to the left a little bit. Now it's back to the right.
Yep.
That needle, in terms of Jonathan Taylor's availability on Sunday, when we on Tuesday started prognosticating that exact question, and Eddie and I were pretty firmly, I think, convinced that he was not going to play, that needle is starting to lean towards you.
Yes.
It is starting to lean towards you.
And I think it goes back to some of the points that I outlined when I made the prediction of Robin the Genie, which is that I'm willing to buy into the fact that he's taking care of his body, that he's in shape, and he also plays a position that, for what he could do for the Colts, even on a limited basis, he doesn't need to have gone necessarily through a full camp or a full preseason regiment. If this was a quarterback we were talking about, I'd be right there with you. It's I don't know that I really want to throw him out there, not just because it's a different position in terms of value, but it's a different position in terms of the amount of knowledge and comprehension you absolutely have to have play to play versus, again, I said this to you at the time, Jake, maybe this is a simplistic way of looking at it, but just hand the ball off to him and let him do his thing.
Yeah.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Give it to JT, let him go house.
I mean, listen, when you watch him run and you watch that play against New England, you're like, okay, that home run hitting ability, when you combine that with Anthony Richardson, it is hard to not all of a sudden start to let your mind wander. It's like I said when that NCAA tournament bracket comes out. You might be a 12 seed, but you're looking at it and you're like, you know what? The 1 seed gets beat by UMC Baltimore. What the hell? Let's go.
107.5 The Fan.
Do you know that the Eagles are playing at Gamebridge coming up to start next week, Monday and Tuesday?
I did know that.
I thought they played on Sundays.
That's well played there. No, the new Eagles are sponsored by Chick-fil-A. They take Sundays off. They play Mondays, Tuesdays. I will admit to you guys, there are probably a lot of areas where in music and things like that our tastes would differ for the obvious reasons, but that is one of them that I'm assuming, like, I just find the Eagles to be, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, I find their music to be really sleepy. Like, when I hear the Eagles play, I think, J&V will probably kill me for this. When I hear the Eagles play, when I was a kid, I'm the youngest of three. My two older sisters were both, like, really active in, school activities, sports, whatever else. When I hear the Eagles play, I think of sitting in the backseat of my mom's car, going to, like, every Eastwood, Fulton, Craig, Carmel Clay, South Wayne, every middle school volleyball game possible, riding around in the back of my mom's car hearing music on AM radio, and then maybe going to the dentist's office. Hotel California is not a bad song, but if you ever go to Hotel California, which is an actual hotel, I think it's the
you can never leave, though,
I think
right?
it's the Beverly Hills Hotel. That's right. Once you check in,
Yeah,
forget about it, right?
Yeah.
Do not do it on Booking.com. That's non-refundable. So although it doesn't matter because you can't leave.
Exactly.
We walked up, Michael Young and I walked up to take the picture of basically the picture of the album cover, and a loudspeaker from the bushes was like, "Please vacate the area. No photos allowed. Get the hell out of here." And it was like, okay, we're gone.
Why do I feel like, and I know there's many stories in the jQuery library, but why do I feel like every story that involves you going to a historical site always ends with the people that either own or are part of that property being mad that you're there?
Well, typically because, Jimmy, I'm going places where I'm not allowed. But thank you for pointing that out, right? Now, the Astrodome fellow was cool with it, right?
Yes.
Now, when I went to the Michael Jackson Thriller house, where the music video was filmed for Thriller,
yes,
the woman that owns the house, I was standing in the driveway taking a picture, and the woman that owns it came roaring around off the street to come up the driveway, and I had to kind of jump out of the way, and she was not pleased. And I kind of was like, get over it. And then I'm like, you know what? I really thought about it, and I'm like, so she got out of her car, and I said, you know what? I probably do owe you an apology. Like, I looked up the address. I've known of this house from the Michael Jackson Thriller video, and I guess you just don't think about the fact that, like, it is someone's residence.
Right.
And then she was so nice. She's like, oh my gosh, like, thank you for saying that. She's like, I didn't mean to be rude. She said, but when I bought the house, they didn't even tell me what it was, which is surprising,
wow,
right? And she said, but that was like, she said, I bought it in like 2000. And it was relatively anonymous until he passed away.
Right.
And then it became this fervor, again. And she's like, and it's every day, every single day, there's people out here. And I'm like, yeah, that would get old.
Which one is the one? Was it the Breaking Bad house where they have the sign and they pointed to you and said, hey, we don't want to talk to you?
Breaking Bad house. There's the two people that live in Walter White's house were sitting inside their open garage under the garage door that was open in aluminum lawn chairs with a little table with like a lemonade basket. It's like the Americana Norman Rockwell greeting of like, hello, neighbor. And I walked up to ask him like how often people come up, and the lady pointed to a sign that says, and I'm going to say it in
nice terms,
okay? No freaking questions, no freaking camera, like no freaking pictures. Stay off the freaking lawn. Don't freaking talk to us. And she pointed at it, and I'm editing that. And, my buddy Byron's a lawyer, and he's like, this is ridiculous, this is public property, I'm on the sidewalk. And I'm like, okay, let's just head out. And then we went and got a pizza and came back and threw it on the roof and left.
7.5 The Fan.
You know, there's a line in this. Michael Young or Laura Steele would be able to better, to the exact specification, tell me the meaning of it. But there's a line in that song in Hotel California where he says, they grab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. That is actually a jab at, and I'm not familiar with, I can't recall which Eagle it is, whether it's Glenn Fry, Don Henley, I'm not sure which one, but one of them apparently was in a dispute with one of the members of Steely Dan over a woman. Some sort of, cheating on or affair or whatever it is, and that's what that line was for, just for what it's worth. College football, full slate, although Indiana is off, right? They are at the music school, right, Eddie?
Yes.
And what are they doing there? Indiana. They're snapping their fingers. A 1, a 2.
You know what to do.
You know what to do.
I wish on the radio. There are a few things that I wish more than on the radio that people could see. Literally, it's like the electric gleam of Sex in the Window from A Christmas Story. The electric gleam and beam of radiant smile that Eddie Garrison has anytime he gets to reference Tom Allen singing the fight song.
It's just so stupid.
But when they were doing it after wins, everybody loved it, man.
Winning cures all.
When they were doing it after wins, when they beat Virginia and he was kicking over trash cans and high-fiving everybody and hugging Martha the mop lady and tackling players and separating guys' shoulders by body slamming them in ecstasy, and I was like, this seems a little over the top. People are like, you just don't know Tom Allen.
I think it was because it was new and it was something different, but now that it is
they were winning.
And they were winning.
When you're winning, you're a symbol of elevation. When
Bingo.
You're losing, you're a sideshow.
Bingo. College football slate, though. Indiana obviously not in action, but we'll begin with some of the top 25 games. And you tell me if there's – I don't know that there are any quote-unquote separation Saturday games this weekend. Oklahoma and Texas. Texas is ranked third and probably has the best – this is probably – Oklahoma-Texas might have pretty good playoff implications, to be honest, because Texas has gotten off to obviously a great start. Arch Manning's not – Quinn Ewers is playing at a level that I think so many people wanted to see Arch Manning play and yet hasn't yet seen the field. But if you look at their schedule, listen to this. After Texas plays Oklahoma, this is what stands between Texas and the college football playoff. If they and listen, Jake, we're doing a sports talk radio show in Indianapolis. Why are you telling me about Texas football? Because for Notre Dame or Ohio State, or Michigan, this could have implication, right? Texas takes on Oklahoma at home tomorrow. After that, at Houston, home against BYU, home against Kansas State, at TCU, at Iowa State, and home against Texas Tech. That's like home free, right?
Yeah. The road is paved. You take care of business against Oklahoma, the road is paved.
I mean, for real. Their second closest game? They beat Alabama by 10. The other team to come the closest to Texas?
I do now because I saw it. Go ahead.
Go Pokes, baby. Wyoming. Wyoming's got themselves a top 25 matchup. You mark my words. Now, nobody here cares, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
All right.
Okay? The stunner in college football this weekend. The top 25 team that finds themselves wondering, just like Damone, woke up in a great mood. I don't know what the hell happened.
And like Harbaugh next weekend.
That's exactly right. See, next weekend, and we'll get to that. But this weekend, the stunner is going to be Fresno State, ranked, getting beat by the Pokes, the Wyoming Cowboys. You mark my words. Mark my words. And I'm telling you right now.
Words have been marked.
If Wyoming wins.
Uh-oh.
I will come in decked out in total Wyoming gear on Monday.
Okay.
I can't tell you a single player that plays for Wyoming.
I'm just glad it's not a Kevin Bowen.
I watched Wyoming.
Clothing.
That's right. Not going to take my shirt off.
I watched Wyoming play an entire football game, and I still couldn't name you a player on their team. I watched the Texas Tech Wyoming
Did you really?
overtime thriller.
Did you lose a bet?
I did. I did lose a bet. I bet Texas Tech.
1-800-9 with it, Jimmy.
Wait a minute. Did you lose a bet and that's why you were watching the game?
No.
You literally wagered on Texas Tech and Wyoming?
I did. It was in my defense, and this won't work for you. It might work for Eddie. In my defense, it was the opening college football Saturday.
Jimmy.
It was the last slate, little late night action, and I thought, oh, Texas Tech could get the job done.
1-800-9-WITH-IT.
Let me give you a prediction here, Jimmy Cook.
Okay, I'm not going to like this.
Do you have
prediction.
cousins?
Nieces and nephews, yeah.
Okay, nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
Do you have so you have aunts and uncles that are living? But you have siblings, right?
Yes.
And then in-laws?
The Cook family tree is weird. Yes, I have in-laws. Yes,
Okay.
I have siblings. Yes, I have nieces and nephews.
Okay, so you've got a family of, let's say, 12 to 15 people that are fairly easily accessible,
Yes,
right?
I do,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe a couple of them live a state or two away, and you see them a couple times a year at holidays,
yes,
right?
yeah.
I'm just telling you this, okay? There might be a time
Yeah.
in the next year or so,
Mm-hmm.
based on that story you just told,
Yeah.
that you are going to a hotel because name one of your aunts that lives in a different town.
Vicky.
The Aunt Vicky. Oh, I have an Aunt Vicky too.
Oh, it's sister.
Are we
Vicky.
related?
It's.
Okay, Vicky lives where?
I didn't hear you say it. Vicky lives in Charleston,
Okay, so West Virginia or South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Okay,
Sorry.
so Vicky's in town.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, Jimmy, Vicky's in town, and we're having a wonderful brunch at the Claypool Court." And you go, "Great." It's not around anymore, but so you go to the hotel thinking you're going to the brunch, and you walk into the brunch room, and there's the whole family, and they're sitting
Why are we
there,
doing an
and there's
intervention? Why are
one
we
guy,
doing-
there's one guy that you're not familiar with, and he says, "Hey, Jimmy, how are you?" And you say, "I'm good," and he says, "Listen, my name's Tony, and I've been here for a couple of days just spending some time with these people. They love you like crazy, but they're afraid they're losing you, and so they decided they want to get together and fight for you. So they're going to say what they've got to say, and you're going to say what you've got to say, and then we're just going to move on from there."
What day is this?
It's on a Sunday.
Okay. Do you mind? And what time of year would we say?
This will be say a year from now.
Year from right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be appropriate to tell Tony, hey, listen, I want to do? You said it was about noon. Like I want to do this, but like the 1 o'clock slate's about to get going. So if you could just pause this for just a second, Tony.
Well,
You mean the noon slate?
What-
There is
what-
no 1 o'clock in college. It's all.
He said a
Sunday.
Sunday. He said a Sunday.
Sunday.
So
Sunday.
what Tony's going to say at that point is, well, here's the thing. We got a plane ready to go right now to take you away to a really nice place, and this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to change your life.
Vegas?
You are you in or out? It's Atlantic City. We're taking you to Atlantic City.
Man.
That's right. I'm telling you.
It was a $10 wager.
Well, you know what? It all starts somewhere.
All right,
it
all
was
right.
just a sip. Right? I mean, I'm telling you, and I love Wyoming. I'm going to retire to Wyoming when my time is done here, which could be in a year. When my time is done, Shannon Walsh, well aware of it. I've told her before. We are loading up a truck. We are stopping in 7 cities between here and eastern Wyoming. We are going into each shelter of dogs.
Have you picked out the cities?
I do know
already?
the cities.
Okay.
Yep. We're going into the animal shelter at each place and walking in and saying, "I need your dog that is least likely to be adopted." 7 of them going to live on my ranch in Wyoming. We're going to have DirecTV that's not going to have the Bravo network, which will be beautiful, so I don't have to watch that garbage Real Housewives crap ever again.
Reunion show was on Wednesday.
Oh, so you also are subject to this?
I am. Yeah.
And
Only
then
Orange County though. That's important.
the dogs are gonna run free with a cow. 1 cow, bunch of dogs, and then the weird thing is that becomes uncomfortable. So I'm gonna feed the dog steak, but not from the cow.
Is that an important distinction you wanted to make too?
What's that?
That it was not from the cow?
Correct. I mean, I don't want the cow getting self-conscious. But anyway, in terms of the slate of games, anything that jumps out at you in terms of this weekend in college football, and I don't mean from a gambling standpoint, but simply games that have implication in college football.
I mean, you already mentioned Texas and Oklahoma. There's a lot of buzz around the idea of Ohio State and Maryland. I mean, I don't really know why other than it's Tagovailoa versus
Maryland's intriguing, though, because they
Yeah.
can score a lot of points, Jimmy.
Yeah. I mean, but that's one of those where you hear that going in, they score a lot of points, and then Ryan Day and his defense shut them down, and we're
And it's in Columbus, too.
changing the
which is a big
channel at
difference.
halftime.
Right.
You've seen the shirt. I never abandoned it, but I'll be honest, I was a little down a couple weeks ago. My emotions are back. Spirits are high. Jeff Brom in Louisville taking on Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. That's obviously a big top 25 matchup, and if the Irish win that, it sets up a massive date with USC next weekend. At
Is
Notre Dame
Louisville
Stadium.
any good?
They have a solid defense, I guess. And also, the reason I'm throwing this out, it's the same reason that a lot of people view Jeff Brom this way. Like the last time that Notre Dame played a Jeff Brom-led unit, it was a very close back and forth game. Brown was obviously able to get a lot of the guys he wanted, picking apart the cupboards of Purdue. I think they're a decent team. Again, this is one of those moments, Jake, where in the past, like in the Brian Kelly era, I look at this game and it's like, it's a toss-up. For Marcus Freeman, I don't want it to be. I want it to be a going-away game, a confident win. Granted, I wanted that last week against Duke, and they didn't get it. They won at the very end. But I would like this to be a confidence game, you need to take care of your business, get it done, move on to USC, and let's roll type of game for the Irish.
Here's a game. Now, let me ask you this about Notre Dame and Ohio State.
Okay.
You mentioned Ohio State, Maryland.
Yes.
I don't anticipate this happening, but let's say for the sake of discussion it does. Notre Dame takes care of business against Louisville, and Maryland goes in and wins in Columbus and beats Ohio State. Does that help or hurt Notre Dame?
I mean, ultimately, it's all going to come down in my mind, and maybe you tell me if I'm too cloudy with this. If there's no other one-loss teams, like if it winds up being 4 undefeated teams going into Selection Sunday or Playoff Sunday, the Irish are out, right? Like if you have Texas, Georgia, USC, that would be a loss for Notre Dame. So, but if there's 4 Power 5 schools undefeated,
the most likely of those would be Texas. We'll say for the sake of argument, USC or Oregon, right? Or Washington. One of those. They could cannibalize each other, but
right.
Let's say one of those 3, right?
Right.
So Texas, a Pac-12, FSU, right?
Yes.
And Georgia, right?
If that happens, Notre Dame's not getting it.
Correct.
They need other losses to happen. So,
and we haven't even discussed Michigan.
Right. Exactly. That's a big one. We know their loss is impending next week, so that's why I kind of skipped over them. You have to forgive me for that.
Excellent point. I keep forgetting about that. See, I when I look at Michigan's schedule and I try to figure out whether that Michigan can go undefeated, I look at all the games and I see all the games as a win, except I forget that I'm not even factoring in next weekend because to me it's such a given. Foregone conclusion. When if you've ever been to Swiss Valley Ski Lodge or Boyne Mountain's way up north, but Swiss Valley's in Jones, Michigan, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Next Saturday night, if you're near Swiss Valley,
yeah,
and you put your ear to the wind, you're not going to hear a Ricola ad. There's nobody at Swiss Valley standing on the mountaintops going, Ricola. None of that, right? What you're going to hear, I can tell you right now, about 9 o'clock at night, you're driving near Jones, Michigan, you're near Swiss Valley Ski Lodge, the mountains of Swiss Valley, Jones, Michigan. From the mountaintops, the drive back from Ann Arbor has become detoured because the celebration is still ongoing. And the Indiana Fighting Hoosiers have parked their bus at the bottom of the mountaintop. And Eddie, what is faintly screaming from the top of the mountaintops?
1, 2, you know what to do.
That's it. I'm telling you. Indiana's still going to be celebrating, shocking the college football world and knocking Michigan out of the playoffs.
I tell you what, you get enough snaps going, avalanche warnings might be happening. I mean, I'm just, look out.
Depends on how much of the fake snow machines they have already gone. But here's the thing. Kidding aside, if Maryland beats Ohio State, I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, does that hurt Notre Dame's resume? Because Notre Dame at the beginning of the year, Jimmy, the thought was they have 3 games that are their good win capability of going and saying, this is what separates us from everybody else. They missed out on the Ohio State game. No big deal. You can make up for it with 2 more really good wins. USC would be massive, and the other would be Clemson. But Clemson has already lost twice and is clearly not Clemson. Hell, I was looking at it. Clemson might lose 5 games.
Yeah. It would be better for Ohio State to fall to Michigan later in the year than it would be for them to fall to Maryland. I think it impacts us a little bit, but again, if Notre Dame takes care of their business, and let's say that's the only loss Ohio State has all year.
Where does Ohio State play Michigan?
I think it's at Michigan.
Let me
double check that, but I feel like it's at Michigan. One of the most electric stadiums in all of college football.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Well,
yes, it's at Michigan.
Okay.
Yep.
If
last game of the year.
If theoretically Michigan is unbeaten, and Ohio State goes in and beats Michigan, and beats them by more than a final score, then Notre Dame wins that tiebreaker because they would both have. If Notre Dame has beaten USC, and Notre Dame's only loss is to Ohio State early in the year at home on the final play of the game, then that would trump Michigan's only loss being to Ohio State and being, if it's more than a one-score game, because they both lost at home, and because it was earlier in the year. Recency bias is a huge factor, Jimmy, in the college football playoff.
That's why people make a big deal about getting a conference championship game.
Correct.
Right? Because you get the last say.
Correct.
Yep.
It is tough. The Pac-12 learned that lesson, right? Because they're just sitting on their hands and everybody else is getting a last chance for emphasis, for oomph.
I realize this is going to change, you'd hope, next year, and maybe they've announced this. I might have missed it, but this is just another reminder, and it's arrived now at week 6 of the college football season, that the Big Ten's conference setup is garbage. I know everybody's been mad at the divisions for the last decade, but a proper conference championship game, with all due respect to Wisconsin, should be Ohio State versus Michigan, or Ohio State versus Penn State, or Michigan versus Penn State. Not the winner of that trio taking on Wisconsin and probably taking care of business.
Now I have a real conflict here.
Okay.
Roy Reed. This is massive.
Hello, Roy.
Do we have the breaking news sounder, Eddie? This is big. Thank you. Roy Reed chimes in. He's listening to the show right now. Okay?
Hey, Roy.
Roy Reed.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Can you talk about the Colts, please?
No.
No, I think this is a legitimate addition. I don't think it's a critique.
Roy Reed is listening to us right now from Laramie, Wyoming.
Should have known.
Why don't you read Roy's text?
That is all levels of awesome. Jake, nobody here in Laramie views this game as an upset. We're expecting to win. Go Pokes. Hell yes, Roy. Now, here's the thing. Roy, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, there's a million reasons to love Roy, right? Roy Reed, born and raised in Indiana. Checks a good box there, right?
Yep.
Living in Wyoming. 2 for 2. Mostly use this account for sports content. Cool. All good. Colts and Wyoming fan. Sign me up.
There you go.
Army vet.
There you go.
I mean, let's
Thank you for
submit
your
this
service.
times 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I go to the profile picture.
Uh-oh.
And there's Roy with what looks like a buddy behind him, given the deuces, the peace sign sideways deuce thing. That's fine. And he's wearing a Notre Dame shirt. And there in his bio, Notre Dame and Cubs fan.
Welcome, Roy.
I have a
can't all
problem
be
with the
perfect.
last one.
Huh?
I have a problem with the last one.
We can't all be perfect,
No.
right? But Roy, thank you, man. Go Pokes. The other game this weekend in college football, and I'm being totally serious, and I was going to say this, somebody just texted me, but
Top 25 or
I
no?
agree with this. A top 25 game
All right.
that I think could have big, big implications.
Okay.
The Kentucky Wildcats, who just beat Florida, handily, mind you, and narrowly squeaked past that pesky Akron team that Indiana went 7 overtimes with.
They're scrappy.
They beat Akron by 32. The one thing is between the hedges.
Held Akron to 3 points.
But which Indiana could not do in the overtime or the second one, right?
They still won.
Do you think Kentucky snapped and sang after that? When they beat Akron, when Kentucky beat Akron 35-3, what song did they go sing?
Jimmy's lost it.
That's
In my old Kentucky home.
Yep.
The Kentucky Wildcats could very well go between the hedges and knock Georgia flat on their keister. Georgia's unbelievable. There's no doubt about it. But I'm telling you, I think Georgia this year so far, struggled a little bit against Auburn. South Carolina hung around with them. And then outside of that, do you really know? I mean, okay, Ball State, UT Martin, and UAB. Kentucky could give Georgia some problems. And that sounds crazy. But Kentucky is not bad. Eddie, you have a smirk.
What?
You have a smirk.
Yeah.
Hey,
You look like you just got caught skipping class. What's the confession here?
Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it.
I realize that, Jake, you're not going to take the opportunity I'm giving to you here because you've been trenched in for this, or dug in rather, for this stance for months. If you were given the opportunity to switch your bold prediction of IU going into the Big House to stun Michigan, and instead switch it to Kentucky going into Georgia and stunning the Bulldogs, would you do it?
Oh, well, okay. Couple of things here, Jimmy.
And there's a lot at play there. And if I'm out of turn, I apologize.
A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right?
Sure.
I know that Indiana's going to beat Michigan.
Yeah.
It's
less a prediction.
Indiana's going to beat Michigan.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. While I do think, and I kind of like Georgia. I've always kind of liked Georgia. Lars Tate played at Georgia. I've always kind of liked Georgia. And my passion here of what I'm about to say leans more towards basketball than football, okay?
Yeah. That's my fault.
But I hate Kentucky.
Yeah, you don't need Big Blue Nation to have more. I get it.
Hate Kentucky.
Yeah.
Now, Tom Spaulding took me to a Kentucky-Auburn game about, it's probably been 8 years ago. And he was just a listener. I shouldn't say that comes off the wrong way. I didn't know Tom well, but he would listen to the radio show that I did with Derek, and I was talking about how much I hate Kentucky. And Tom, who is a Kentucky native and season ticket holder, sent me an email. Was like, I will take you to a Kentucky game so you can experience it. And so I said, okay. So one February Saturday afternoon on a snowy, kind of cold day, I went and picked him up, and we made it to Lexington in 2 hours and 38 minutes. Thank you very much. Stopped and got an Ale 8 on the way home, which is a must, and which you can now buy in Indiana, but at that time you could not. And we went to the game in Rupp, and not only was Tom just a super, super guy, and he and I hit it off immediately together like we'd been best buddies. I went down there. I had him paint my face with a little UK thing on my cheek, soaked in the game, and it was a great atmosphere. And the people were as nice as could be, and I said, you know what, you guys are right. Tom convinced me otherwise, and I walked out of there and said, I now just simply strongly dislike Kentucky. And then that kind of wore off, and I like Tom a lot, and I like the people that we sat with a lot, and the face painter did a good job, and I still hate Kentucky. And my dislike for Kentucky, it was a strong dislike, and then I went back to hating them. Now it's probably back to strong dislike because my buddy Scott McConnell did get me a bottle of Jefferson's Reserve bourbon.
Nice.
And it was decent for my birthday, and it was decent. And bourbons in general. I mean, larceny bourbon, goes without saying, is fabulous. And that's Kentucky. So in that regard, they do get a pass. But the other team we have not talked about is Purdue in terms of the weekend. You know, Purdue coming off that win against Illinois, but now they got Iowa. And Iowa's another one, Jimmy, that I think is trying to kind of find out exactly where they are, right? I think that's a game between two teams that we kind of don't know exactly where they are. I know that Iowa's in Iowa City, but if you look at Iowa right now, you know, they lost to Penn State. They were blanked by Penn State. They beat Michigan State, but Michigan State's absolutely backpedaling. So these are two teams that this could be a Boulder and Stream game. I don't mean necessarily that either one's going to be like some huge bowl-eligible team, but it just gives you an idea of, like, which one is a legitimate, probably bowl contender, I guess, in a 6-win category, and which one their season could go the wrong direction.
It definitely makes things easier for Purdue, and we've talked about this a lot with Indiana on the bowl counter. If you're looking at potential wins for them, you get a win here, that's your third win of the season, and then you have, ignoring the ranked opponents, opportunities against Nebraska, Minnesota, that one's at home, on the road at Northwestern, and at home against Indiana to get you to bowl eligible. You lose this game, then you're starting to have to, can still do it, but you got to go perfect against Nebraska, Minnesota, Northwestern, and IU. Otherwise, you have to pick up victories against Ohio State, which, albeit they've done before at Ross-Ade, or against Michigan on the road on November 4th.
We'll get into one other college football nuance on the other side of this because and I'm being totally serious when I say this. I thought of something yesterday that I think sounds ridiculous and outside the box, but I also think it's progressive, and I want to run it past you guys. And we'll get, obviously, much heavier into the Colts on this Blue Friday. Colts getting set for the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. Bob Kravitz going to join us at 2:30. But a further look at the injury report and where things stand for the Horseshoe coming up second half of the show. Query & Company, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. In my old Kentucky home.
Single Live at 107.5 The Fan.
Obviously, Purdue made a coaching change because Jeff Brom left to go to Louisville. Understandable. I don't think anybody holds ill will on that. He's from there. He's a legend there. He's probably the biggest football icon in the city of Louisville of the last quarter century or so. But maybe it's time now for Indiana to take their best shot. Nothing against Tom Allen as a person. But I do think there's enough body of work now and enough evidence to see that it would be in the best interest of Indiana to explore making a change at the head coach position, especially if this year continues to go south, because you've changed coordinators, you've changed assistants, you've changed every chair on the deck of the Titanic. Again, Tom Allen, by all account, is a wonderful person. And I have a mutual friend, I guess you'd say a friend, that worked for him that went through some challenging times, and Tom Allen was wonderful. I don't dispute anything about him as a person. But in the end, from an athletic standpoint, your job is to win football games. And Indiana put themselves and painted themselves into a corner because they gave him a massive contract, in my opinion, prematurely or without justification, that is going to make it really difficult for them to get out from underneath the buyout. I mean, a $20 million buyout, for example. And I think he's owed like $4 million this year with all incentives and everything else. The stock has never been higher for the Big Ten and to be able to recruit somebody to the Big Ten. If I'm Indiana, I'm calling up Jake Dickert at Washington State and saying, look, you played collegiately in the Midwest. He's from Wisconsin. He knows the Midwest. He knows the Big Ten. And he's been coaching at Washington State for 3 years as the head coach. And in the previous 2, took him to bowl games. Now, 7-6. It's not like they were setting the world afire, but they're off to a 4-0 start. But either Jake Dickert at Washington State or Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, both of which have their teams going in upward trajectories, and theoretically would be desperate to get away from perhaps, and I know nothing about the situations that Jake Dickert has at Washington State or Jonathan Smith has at Oregon State. Jonathan Smith, I think, might actually be an Oregon State guy from the get-go. I think he played at Oregon. He was a quarterback at Oregon State. But nonetheless, your conference is getting ready to dissolve, and at the very least, probably best case scenario, you're getting ready to now start scouting film on San Jose State and Nevada. And you're going into a conference that's on like the CBS Sports Network and is relegated to, probably not the most desirable time slots. And you're going into probably the Mountain West at the best for those two schools.
Right.
I'm going to those two guys and saying, I'm going to offer you the lifeline right now of getting out of that and into the conference that everybody is trying to get in on. Because even though we know it probably doesn't happen ultimately, the thought process is that college football is about to go into 2 major superpower conferences, one of them anchored by the Big Ten having possibly 20 teams in it. And what better way to recruit a coach right now? For the first time, Indiana would be able to say, instead of saying, do you want to come coach at Indiana? They're able to say, do you want to come coach in the Big Ten? And get in from the rainstorm before you get drenched and whisked away. And if I'm Indiana, I'm having that kind of vision, that kind of foresight, and that kind of forward thinking that has eluded them for so long and put them in this exact situation.
I completely agree with you. I would like to see that happen, but I'm going to put on a non-tinfoil hat today, a different hat. A hat of the IU grad and a hat of the IU basketball fan.
Okay.
Unless it is a booster, a donor that is strictly an IU football fan and wants to write that check, I would be absolutely livid if they spent $20 million to get rid of Tom Allen. If that change is going to happen
You'd rather have
December
that money
1st.
spent where?
I mean, basketball clearly, but like,
well, does the basketball program suffer financially?
I don't know. Right? Probably not. But like, I don't.
But Jimmy, here's the thing.
It's not worth it to me.
Okay.
I'd wait another year.
Okay. Who are the 3 biggest basketball programs right now in the United States?
North Carolina, Duke,
Kansas.
Kansas.
Right? Okay. During all of this conference realignment, give me 3 schools whose names you have not heard. I mean, North Carolina you have, but that's because they're pretty competent in football, and it's a great academic institution, as is Duke. But Duke is just now becoming decent in football. But Kansas, for example. Kansas, which is perfectly aligned from a geographic standpoint to be in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten had zero interest in Kansas. The Big Ten didn't have a lot of interest in UCLA. UCLA, when the Big Ten called up USC and said, we want you in the Big Ten, USC said, that's fine, but we've got to have a travel partner. So we've got to have UCLA come with us. And they said, okay, fine, we'll take UCLA. And UCLA said, great, can we bring our 11 national championship banners and our John Wooden statue? And they said, wait a minute, are you under the illusion that we care about basketball? This is a football move, man. You're coming here because we want USC football. We don't care about USC and USC basketball and Bronny. Okay, great, but we want football. It's all about football.
Sure.
And so for Indiana, I get what you're saying, Jimmy, and I don't dispute Indiana is a basketball school and always will be. I know that. But football is a facilitator from a revenue standpoint that can then feed basketball.
But those checks still come in regardless who the coach is, right?
What I'm saying is this. No, disagree. What I'm saying is sometimes you got to spend money to make money.
Sure.
And if you're Indiana, it's time to join the big boy world and realize that a basketball program can be greatly facilitated by and bolstered by a football program in a conference now that is all about football, to be competitive in it and get into a bowl game and get like the revenue that comes with that. Sure. And everything that comes with the television rights, everything. And I realize it's evenly split. But football is the breadwinner that pays for so much of. And listen, Indiana fans are thirsty for it, man. Indiana during the COVID year goes to the Gator Bowl, and people are loading up their cars. I mean, right now, everybody I went to school with goes down and tailgates every weekend, and they don't even go into the game. They don't even buy a ticket to the game, right? They don't. The game? What? You kidding me? I'm out here tailgating, and then we're gonna walk. I mean, then we're going to Sink the Biz and get an AMF. But if you start packing, I mean, they built this beautiful stadium, and they got a big rock and the world's largest flagpole, and then they got like 1,800 kids that go in and see it, and that move back and forth from end zone to end zone when they're in the 5th overtime against Akron. I'm just saying, I think it's time for Indiana and Purdue have the same problem, both of them. Both of them had really good coaches in Bill Mallory and Joe Tiller that got them to probably the ceiling of where those programs are, which is consistent bowl teams year in and year out.
Yeah.
But both programs got greedy and said, well, we need to be in like the Michigan-Ohio State stratosphere, and jettisoned both of them, and they've been chasing it ever since. And for Indiana, I think it's time to go out and find yourself again. Terry Hepner was going to be that guy, I do think. But find yourself like a Bill Mallory type, whether it be Jake Dickert, Jonathan Smith, but a solid football year in and year out 7-8 win coach, gets you to bowl games, gets people excited, sells tickets, and brings in the money. Eddie, you're looking at me. That means that we must have breaking news. Yes, sir.
Injury update from Shane Steichen.
Okay.
The Colts have ruled out Shaquille Leonard because of a groin injury, defensive end Kwity Paye because of a concussion, and left tackle Bernard Ryman because of a concussion. Ryan Kelly has clear concussion protocol and will play on Sunday. Now, the status of Jonathan Taylor has not been decided yet. So there's that.
Okay. Interesting. Now, the Shaq Leonard thing is interesting, and I'll tell you why.
He's healthy.
Do we have that clip?
Was he?
Do we have that clip from Shane Steichen?
I'll have to find it.
When did the groin injury take place? Was it did Shaq Leonard injure his groin because of the stretching of the truth? Is that what it was?
Could have been.
When he was asked about why he wasn't in as many plays and why late in the game, especially on third downs, he was not on the field, and Shane Steichen was asked about it and said that it had nothing to do with health for Shaq Leonard, but rather just rotation. Were they stretching that thing so thin in that explanation that it also affected his groin? Honestly. Do we have that Steichen bite, Eddie?
I got to go back and cut it.
Because that's that is the one thing that they swore. It was that he's healthy. And I get it. And the sad reality, and Shaq Leonard he's been a great player for the Colts when he's healthy. But the last couple of weeks, Jimmy, the reality is if the Colts are going to have to play without Shaq Leonard this Sunday, which obviously they're going to have to, I don't know how much different that is than the last few weeks, because there have been times during the game where I have literally looked at the box score because I'm like, wait, is he out there?
You haven't noticed when he's gone, and you haven't noticed when he's there. And those are both bad descriptions of a player that one expects to be the game changer that he was for 2 seasons or so here, that they paid him to be. And again, a groin injury is not insurmountable, but it's the continuing now of year over year of injuries stacking up. And now this year in particular, you're seeing the snap counts divided in such a way where you start to wonder, is there still a place for him to be the player they wanted him to be?
Right.
And I don't know that answer is yes. I think it's no.
You know, one of the interesting things when you're looking at, and Jimmy, I'm going to ask you to pull up the Sport Track salary things, okay? And it's really early and premature and presumptuous for us to do this, but it is Sports Talk Radio. When you're looking at the future for the Colts and the money, coming up with the money to extend a Michael Pittman, to free up to eventually, and this probably doesn't coincide because that contract would be coming off the book by then anyway, but other players that are coming up, young players, they've got some, Kwity Paye's starting to show some flashes, Dio's starting to show some flashes. They've got some good young players that eventually their number's going to be called, and you're trying to figure out where you could perhaps get cap room. The question then becomes, if Shaq Leonard, from a health standpoint, and I don't mean it as that he's a bad player, but just strictly from a health standpoint, if he is not able to give you 100% production from a health standpoint and becomes a Bob Sanders, do you then explore what the dead cap hit is of terminating his contract? And I don't mean right now. I mean in a year or two. Now, for those that are wondering, dead cap means the money that still goes against your cap, but you're not getting production.
Yeah, so next year, and this is, again, it's as Jake mentioned, not just it's very early for speculation, but it's very early to look at a salary cap table for 2024 when there's still a lot of stuff that would need to hit the books, but they have an estimated $70 million in cap space next year. Again, that's not including any potential extensions, nothing. Just who would be on the books next year, estimated $70 million in cap space. Conversely, $6 million to them this year. Shaq Leonard is owed $20 million, or would have a cap hit of $20 million next year, a dead cap hit of $8 million.
Okay, here's what Shane Steichen said when he was asked about Shaq Leonard's reduced number of plays where he was on the field Sunday in the overtime loss to the Rams.
Was Shaq dealing with an injury at all? Because at one point it was Sagoon and EJ Speed.
No.
What's the playing time?
We're just obviously rotating them in there. Obviously, that's the rotation.
So the injury had to have happened between Monday and now, right?
Between Sunday and...
If all parties are being truthful, then yes.
Sunday and Wednesday, because he did not practice Wednesday either. He hasn't practiced at all this week. So
was not on the injury report last week, obviously. So
I mean, it is entirely possible that after the fact they realized there was an injury and that he did not know that when he said that. But you come on. Now, what was the dead cap hit again, Jimmy?
$8 million in 2024.
Okay.
You'd still owe him... Again, $20 million, a cap hit of $20 million in 2024, $23 million in 2025, $19 million in 2026. He's 32 years old and unrestricted free agent in 27.
Now, someone did text me on Sunday because I was asking some people that were at the game. I was like, "Hey, what's going on with Shaq?" And I texted some people at home that are able to watch the game because sometimes I'm not when I'm busy doing some stuff with the Colts Radio Network. And they said, well, at one point they flashed him on Fox that he was limping to the sideline, so maybe he did get slightly nicked up in the game, but it wasn't anything major at the time, and it just kind of developed days after.
His cap hit is 25th overall in the NFL and second for inside linebackers in 2023.
And to be fair, his play to that point absolutely.
Yeah, look,
merited
I'm
that.
never. I want to clarify this, and Jake, I think I speak for you too. I'm never mad at the player in these situations.
Totally.
Right?
And I'm not mad at the
earned the
Colts.
money.
I mean,
Yeah,
at the time,
right.
he had earned it, right?
Right.
But it was a risk.
Yes.
And we don't know that risk isn't going to pay off.
Still early.
But it does at this point because injuries in racing, what do we say? Cautions breed cautions. You go 170 laps, somebody in our intercom during the Indy 500 goes, we haven't had a caution yet. And then all of a sudden we're like, what are you crazy? And then boom. All of a sudden, something happens. Somebody comes, leaves a pits, no wheel on, hit the wall, whatever. Caution comes out. Then you restart it. Boom, another caution.
Boom, red flag.
Yeah, you're right about that. Last couple of years, right? And in football, unfortunately, oftentimes injuries breed injuries.
1075 The Fan.
So here's the thing. During the break, we actually do occasionally talk to one another. If you had to divvy it up, Jimmy, amongst the conversation of the three of us during the commercial break.
That past one or all commercial breaks?
In general.
Okay.
How would you recap for people, and without getting into what it was that you confessed in terms of your, because I want to get to that, but if you had to recap for people like the peek behind the curtain as to how conversations go with us during the break, how does it divvy up in terms of percentage of who's talking and leading and responding and whatever else?
Just to avoid complicated math for the listeners, we'll say 60 you, 40 us, maybe 50-50, just depends.
Okay. And more often than not, what percent of the conversation actually is about anything we're talking about on the radio?
30?
And then the other 70% is just like, oh, hey, did you see this or did you see that? Or then invariably you talking about like an exciting bet you won on a Chilean croquet match that you wagered on, right?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like yesterday in Santiago, I couldn't believe what happened.
Jake, that's Thursdays. Come on.
That's right. Sorry, I got my Chilean cricket schedule mixed up, right?
It's all right.
You know, actually, they might be listening to us in based on that last ad in Chile, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that it's pronounced Chile and not Chile?
Yes.
You did know that?
I mean, I feel like I've heard that before, yes.
Eddie, how do you say it? Santiago is in where?
What?
Santiago. Name the country that it's in.
That's good. I don't know.
You would normally
That's
say
bad.
Chile, right?
I want to say Ecuador or something. I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know why.
It's definitely in Chile.
I would probably.
Do you say Chile or Chile?
Chile.
You do say Chile.
Chile. Yeah, that's how it's
How the
pronounced.
hell do you say that and not know where Santiago is?
I didn't study Chile and all the.
Well, you must have. You know how to pronounce it correctly. That's impressive. My whole life I was always like Santiago, Chile. I guess I kind of have the A on the end. But nonetheless, during the last break, when we were not talking about national and international capitals pronunciations and odd wagers thereof, Jimmy did come up with a fabulous question. And I have always said in my broadcast career, Rich Nye is the one guy that when we would be in group interview settings, Rich Nye is the one guy that would ask questions where I would think to myself, that's a fabulous question. I kind of wish I'd thought of that. And Jimmy actually came up with a brilliant, potentially insightful question about the Indianapolis Colts and the way things are unfolding contractually within their locker room. And we'll tell you what it exactly was next.
and 107.5 The Fan.
Hi there, how are you? It is a Friday, and a darn good-looking one at that. My name is Jake Query. This is Query & Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. The president of the company is Jimmy Cook. The CEO is Eddie Garrison, who is capably flying the is it Millennial or Millennium Falcon? For you, it's the Millennial Falcon, but you're not a millennial, right?
Nope.
You are Gen what?
I don't know.
I think you're Gen Z, right?
Sure.
Okay.
I was born in 98, so I think.
I'm Gen X, right? And speaking of X, it's like X-Files, because we were actually talking in the break just about the Colts and about the situation with Shaq Leonard. If you're just joining us, Eddie, recap for those who are just joining. Where have you been? Joining the program, what we now know about players available and not available on Sunday for the Indianapolis Colts.
Shaq Leonard will be out as he's dealing with a groin injury. Kwity Paye and Bernard Ryman are both out as they are still in the NFL's concussion protocol. Center Ryan Kelly has cleared protocol, and he will play on Sunday. The status of Jonathan Taylor, or the decision, I should say, of activating him to the 53-man roster for Sunday's game has yet to be determined.
Now, as we know with Shaq Leonard, he has been dealing with a number of injuries going back to when he had initially what he thought was, I can't remember if it was ankle first, and then he had a back, but they figured out that the back injury and the ankle injury were connected to one another. He had a surgery to try to relieve that and missed time and has just kind of been in and out. But he did get an extension during the time that his health was in question. And that leads us to Jimmy Cook's big theory where he put on his tinfoil hat.
Jake, I operate sometimes underneath a fool me once, shame on you type of mentality. But Shaq Leonard's contract, 5 years, $98.5 million, was negotiated on behalf of one Malky Kawa of first-round management, who happens to also be the agent in charge of Jonathan Taylor's negotiations. Could it be perhaps, with my tinfoil hat tightened and fastened, that Chris Ballard is operating underneath that fool me once mentality and does not like the negotiation process with one Malky Kawa because he feels got one pulled over on him in the Shaq Leonard negotiations?
Now, it's an interesting theory. And I'm not even certain. As a matter of fact, when you present a tinfoil hat theory, I can tell you whether or not I think it is a wild conspiracy theory by simply playing the music, meaning I, too, then am putting on a tinfoil hat. Protect myself from this wild theory. Or I can abstain from any music playing.
Yeah.
Thus allowing the listener to know that I am in agreement because I don't think that a tinfoil hat is necessary because there might be validity to your statement. And with that, I will say that I think that your theory is the following. Whether the music plays or not. Music plays, I think it's too wild. Music does not. I think it's actually a pretty sound theory. And my answer to you would be? Now, I like the way you think. But I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat to protect myself from the waves that have infiltrated.
Yeah.
Although you had yours on, so I guess you protected yourself. But I think, Jimmy, it's a real plausible. I mean, I think it's a really interesting scenario. And I never rule anything out. But I do think in the end that Chris Ballard's job is to simply assemble the roster to the best of his ability. And I think while I totally like the way you're thinking and the outside the box thinking there, and I don't think it can be completely ruled out, but one would assume that Chris Ballard is smart enough to know that they are not mutual, that they are two separate situations, right? And that, to me, the situation with Jonathan Taylor was not a hold-off because you feel like you were burnt by the transparency or lack thereof of the injury of the preceding situation with Shaq Leonard, but rather because at that position, you just didn't feel like it was one that you wanted to fully invest in. But I absolutely love two things I love about it, Jimmy. Number one, I love the outside-the-box thinking. Number two, I think it is an interesting point and an educated point. And number three, I love mostly that it allowed us to play another sounder.
I'm all for that as well.
Which nobody knows what that means, but I'm saying to play a little sound effect because it means more sound and less of my voice. Greg joins us on the program. What's up, Greg?
Hey, love being part of the company. Just a couple things. One,
Greg, first off, if you don't mind me, and hold your thought there real quick. Have you listened to the show for a while?
Yeah.
Okay. Have we already nominated you as an official capacity within the company?
No, not yet.
Great.
Not
okay,
yet.
Greg. What if? Here's the thing. We're going to have a quick company HR meeting. We don't have an HR department, so we're making this up. But we need company feedback. As an employee of the company or an investor in the company, what is there anything that you need modified in terms of the company? Or are you pretty happy with the way the company's running?
No, exactly happy with the company. I wish we could do two FM signals into one and have better broadcast.
You know, there's an app, Greg. You can find us on YouTube, on the YouTube channel.
I know, but I hear that. But, riding around in the car or whatever. But yeah.
So now, Greg, what line of work are you in?
Pharmaceutical, sir.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I added a lot to the company for after-hour parties, but I don't know who's in charge.
You know, Greg, I'll be honest with you. I'm at the age from a pharmaceutical standpoint where I know what day of the week it is each day by looking at my pill box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Greg, I'm actually going to nominate you. Here's the thing, okay? Your title is you are the Director of Frequency Modification for the company. Is that cool?
You know what? I will do my best. That sounds cool.
Okay. What's on your mind, Greg?
Hey, two things. LEO, right?
That's right. Now, see, I think 4-time winner. That's what I think when you say that. No offense.
I know, but Tom Allen is he is what he is. So I just think that's where IU is going to be. I think those type of coaches. But the Shaq Leonard thing is like when he was Darius, that's when he got his extension. So I think the Colts are getting played by this Darius's person, and as well as Jonathan Taylor. So I just think that the Colts I think are moving in the right direction, and I think they need dead space or what or Shaq Leonard probably needs to go.
When he's healthy, Greg, he's obviously a difference-making player. But the thing about Shaq Leonard to me, and hang on because I want to get your IU thoughts in a quick second, Greg. The thing about Shaq Leonard to me that is enigmatic is it seems like that 2% extra burst that he has is what does separate him from being fairly pedestrian. And if that 2%'s not there, you're just as well off going with the combination of Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. And that's the catch-22 there, right?
Yeah, 100% agree on that. If he's not ready to, I think we overbid for him.
I mean, there are players that player at 90% is better than most players at 100, right? And I think what we're starting to learn is that Shaq Leonard at 90% is the equivalent of a lot of players, or even lesser than a lot of players at 100. Greg, lastly, are you an IU fan?
Yeah, I went to IU. I'm a huge IU fan. Yep.
Okay, not to ask your age, Greg, but this is one of my favorite games. When you were on campus at IU, who was unquestionably the most popular, beloved, and famous athlete on campus?
Oh, on my campus?
When you were there.
Yeah, no, it was a basketball team for sure.
Okay, so the biggest basketball star on the campus of Indiana University during the time you were walking the campus was who?
Yeah, probably Alford. Okay,
so you're mid-50s, Greg, right?
Yeah, a little older than that. So yeah, I guess So I know it was walking the camp.
Well, that's cool. I mean, Alford. If you were on the campus at the same time as Alford, there's your answer, right? There's nobody that overlapped with him that was bigger than Alford. But that said, from a football standpoint, do you think I'm being too critical in my talking about how they need to just basically finally bite the bullet and go out and get a guy, or am I being too critical, or is that a fair statement?
I don't think you're being too critical, but we are who we are on the football thing. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, we're never going to compete with those guys. I mean, we're not. I just don't think we are. We can get the Washington State coach all day long. Doesn't matter. We are not set up to compete.
And
football,
for what reason, though?
Because they don't want to. I mean, Randall L., all those people, we had great. Mallory was good. Everybody we had was decent, but they weren't that deep. I mean, I remember living down in North Carolina, watching IU all day long, and back when we were decent, but we never bowl games, nothing. It was just, this is who we are.
Well, they did have a period. I totally get what you're saying, Greg, and I'm not entirely disagreeing with you, but I'm not picking on you. Okay, wrong. So I'm not trying to shoot the messenger, is what I'm getting at. But I do think that thought process is part of what's held them back. Because, and yes, you're right. Indiana's in a unique situation because you're recruiting from a football standpoint against Purdue, Notre Dame, Michigan State, etc. But, they did have a period there. I mean, if you think about it, they had a period. I know we're going back 35 years ago, but they had a period where they go to the All-American Bowl, then they go to the Peach Bowl, then they go to the Liberty Bowl, then they go back to the Peach Bowl, then they go to the Pull-On Weed Eater, actually the Copper Bowl, then the Independence Bowl. I mean, they had a run there where they were bowl eligible year in and year out, and nationally and certainly conference-wise competitive. And they had a hell of a coach. And that's what it was. They had a hell of a coach. But the problem was at that time, even though Mallory and Knight had a good relationship and everything else, at that time there was zero question that basketball was king. And it is still always going to be king, but you don't have, from the basketball standpoint, the kind of dominating presence running the basketball program like you did in that era. It's just a different era. And I think Indiana needs to realize that football can be a huge fundraising facilitator. But back to the Colts. Appreciate the call, Greg. Taylor is the one that we don't know whether or not he plays on Sunday. Now, other question becomes, if we know Bernard Ryman is out, which he is, if we know Ryan Kelly is back in, that obviously helps. Although I thought they got decent play from the center. Braden Smith's been a little dinged up. But I don't know that Taylor is, with Ryman out of there, do you hold back another week before putting him out, Jimmy? Or do you not even think about the health of the line in terms of your determination on the readiness of Jonathan Taylor?
No, I don't worry about the offensive line. I think that the decision-making behind
But in terms of Taylor helping out the offensive line.
Oh, in terms of
from that blocking back.
My decision on Jonathan Taylor is based on his availability. The idea of him being on a pitch count or being a full status or not going is not impacted by how he would help or hurt the O-line. And if maybe it's a situation again, Jake, where like in years past, they're not using Jonathan Taylor in certain passing situations because of that. Like that might be something that occurs regardless of his health status, right? Because one knock they make against him is his ability in pass protection. So, no, not significant for me in terms of if he goes or not on Sunday. The injury report has no impact to me in terms of the decision-making for if he should play or not.
The one saving grace is the wrong word. If there was a game to be able to withstand the blow of the loss of Kwity Paye, it would be against Tennessee, right?
Yeah. It's not a massive trade-off in terms of how they could potentially challenge you with the pass.
Yeah,
not there.
Exactly. And it's not like Ryan Tannehill at this point is Josh Allen, right, with mobility.
A lot of people, at least pundits, are picking a big day for DeAndre Hopkins just because of the Dallas Flowers injury. I would argue a lot of those pundits have not seen what Juju Brents brings to the table and the fact that Kenny Moore's still out there. But that's the only real threat. You look at the rest of the Titans from a wide receiver standpoint. If they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, they would be a worse wide receiver room than the Colts in terms of question marks and what do they have. So if there's one game you can get away with it, yeah, it's this one.
Hey, Jake, no way in the world that I would ever think about letting go of Shaq Leonard. Not because he doesn't deserve it, but because Ballard won't use that money anyway. Rather, he saves money. That's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, look, when push comes to shove for Chris Ballard, there was going to come a time where he has to spend money. in this Anthony Richardson era, if it's a true fresh start for him, whether it's a narrative or not about him being cheap or not being willing to spend money, that's going to either be broken or it's going to lead to his job being ousted if he's not willing to break that mold. I get why fans say that. I've said it jokingly before in the past, but like as it stands right now, again, there's a lot still to unpack, but projected cap space of $70 million next year. You have a rookie quarterback that's butting into something you think could be really special, you're going to spend the money. If not, you'll find somebody else that will.
Here's what I've always felt about cap space. You ever get gift cards at Christmas?
Yeah.
When you get a gift card for Christmas, somebody gives you now, do you get the gift card like just the Visa gift card that's like the same as somebody giving you money, or do you get the gift card like to a restaurant?
I've gotten the restaurant ones before just for the sake of the analogy. I assume that's where you're going with this.
I've gotten both.
Either one.
Yeah, I've gotten both. Yeah.
How often do you go out and spend it? Like, what's the app between the time, if you get a gift card on December 25th, what's the average date you would say that you go and you use the gift card?
Within 6 months?
Within 6 months. So it's not like that week,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I have enough Speedy Reward points. They called me last week. Speedway called me.
You could buy Speedway. That's how many points you have?
No. They called me. I kid you not. You ready for this?
Sure.
United Arab Emirates. I have enough points to buy United Arab Emirates from Speedway, right? Because I refuse to spend them. I'm like, you know what? Someday I'm going to need them.
Sure.
Someday I'm going to need them.
You know you can redeem those for cents off, right?
Eddie, someday I'm going to need that. I've got gift cards that, like, I think I've had a few that were close to expiring. I'm like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. I have when I get a gift card, I love so much the security of knowing that I have funds that someday on a rainy day I'm going to need.
But with the salary cap, and this is more for the audience, I know you know this, if you're operating underneath 1-year deals, which doesn't often happen, but if you're operating underneath 1-year deals, that's not money that you get back the following year.
I know, but like that, I'm telling you,
gift card, that's always there.
But it feels that way with the Colts, that it's like, you know what? We're just going to keep saving room because we never know when we might need to sign like some big splash and use it.
Ballard thinks they're rollover minutes. Is that what you're saying?
Honestly, like coaches think timeouts are rollover timeouts, right?
Yeah.
I do think that there's an element with salary cap of like, gosh, I don't ever want to take it right to the ceiling because I just never know. And I kind of get that. Can you imagine if you went right to the point where you had no cap room at all, and then all of a sudden, like, there's 2 injuries, and you've got to go out and sign somebody, and you're like, what do we do?
You want to give a little bit of wiggle room. And I would argue they have, I think, a projected $6 million currently for this year. That's basically what that is. That's a rainy day fund at this point, or an emergency fund. I'm not mad about $6 million. It's when you're into like $12 or $13 million still of cap space. Like, go spend it. Go find a veteran on a 1-year deal. And also, you save some of it for if you're a contender, you can buy out a veteran that gets bought out, right? You hear about that post-deadline. Maybe negotiations happen with the team. Hey, we're not a contender. We're going to buy out your contract. And then you get the opportunity to spend there. So, yeah, there's certain windows where you want to leave yourself a little bit of money.
Now, I want to see what I can do with my points here, okay?
When's the last time you did something with your points?
Never.
Ever?
Never.
And you've had a speedy card for how long?
I've got enough to buy chips and salsa for, are you ready for this?
50 years.
I've got enough to buy a chips and salsa order for almost 300 people.
How many points do you have?
You should save it for the PBR party.
You know what? That might be the means to get the PBR party underway. Let's see here. I'm going down to see what's the most. Right now, I have the ability. Now is it gas cards, Eddie, or do you just get gas off?
You can
cents off.
You can redeem cents off.
Okay, I have enough right now for $400 in Speedy Cash gift cards. Now, in terms of here we go, cash fuel. Okay, I can get $400 in gas in cash fuel cards. So $400 worth of gas. I can get. How about that? After 15 years of accumulating and stockpiling my Speedy Reward points, I might have enough right now to get myself 5 tanks of gas.
Am I the only one that feels like that's smaller than it should be?
You think? I think I have 450,000 Speedy Reward points.
How many $50 gift cards can you buy?
Well, that's an excellent question.
There's 60,000 points apiece.
Well, so I can buy like 7 of them. Yeah, so there you go. Wouldn't I buy 350? No, because I could spend and get $400, right? So I would be better off with getting the two $200 ones.
Yeah.
Honestly, like at this point, like they should have a parade for me, right? If I can get $1 million, what ends up I get $1 million?
400,000 points?
Is that
and I probably forget. I probably use it like 20% of the time when they're like, "Do you have?" I'm always because it's on my phone.
You think they'd like
My phone's in the car or whatever. I'm like, I don't have it.
frequent flyer miles? How like they'll pop champagne or make an announcement? Do you think they take you in like a Mac truck or
So
something?
is that
should.
the only place you get gas?
No. Actually, I've been
Is
hit
that where
now.
you snack?
I've been hit now to the Get Go reward things. That's fabulous. That you get 30 cents off like all the time just by being a member. It's great. The Get Go one that's the deal. And then Costco. I go to Costco for gas too, which is the deal. So I haven't been to Speedways. Actually, I have not been in a while.
Fan of the Costco
So how
dog?
do you accumulate 400,000 points?
Eddie, I'm a hoarder. So that literally, I'm not kidding you. Ever since the Speedy Reward thing first came about, like literally every day on my way into work when I was working probably 15 years ago, I'd stop and get like a Diet Mountain Dew, whatever. I'd put it on my points, and I've never done anything with it. I don't
That's
know.
impressive.
Yeah, you ought to. Let me tell you something. That as I told you, I did a mass purge clean out once, and I filled a half a dumpster, not with points.
Cologne?
No, Cologne made the cut.
Watches?
Watches made the cut.
Shoes?
Took a lot of shoes. I've got it right now. As a matter of fact, I've got to stop on my way home at Wheeler Mission and drop off. I have a backpack full of shoes.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. There's a great. I have 2 backpacks. There's a great program called Back on Your Feet, which takes people that are literally trying to get back on their feet, and they do a running group. I think every Sunday or maybe every other Sunday, they meet downtown and they run through the city to get people back in exercise and everything else, and kind of give them the confidence to get back on their feet. And so that organization uses slightly used running shoes so that folks have the shoes to be able to run and just feel better about themselves and kind of get life back in order and get back to housing and everything else. And I want to thank, while I'm on that subject, for last night, Family Promise had Derek Schultz and I out to their annual fundraiser. It was a wonderful event to help raise money for a tremendous organization that takes families in need that are experiencing homelessness and get them into housing and then financial literacy courses and helps them kind of get life turned around. They had a wonderful speech last night from a woman named Portia who was sitting at our table. It was a pleasure to meet her. She grew up in the Chicago area, and her mother, they had gone to Wisconsin when she was a little girl. Her mother's boyfriend basically abandoned them, and so her mother said, "Would you like to go back to Chicago, or my understanding is I might be able to get a job in Indianapolis." And Portia was 13, and her mother put it in her hands to make the decision. So she said, "I want to go back to Indianapolis." Or I want to go to Indianapolis. She'd never been here. They moved to Indianapolis and found some stability, and then they ended up homeless. Portia, when she was a young woman and had a child, was married. Everything was going okay, and then her marriage deteriorated. She ended up homeless temporarily, found out about Family Promise. They got her into housing for she and her children. She, through that process, also was connected with kind of a life counselor that helped her get certification for a job, and now getting back into taking classes online and turning her life around with providing education and a place to live for her kids as well. So fabulous facility, a privilege to meet those that were touched by it, and a lot of fun last night and a lot of money raised. That's the most important thing. And then I feel bad for people because they show up to this fabulous event and they're like, oh, maybe like Andrew Luck is the MC or Tyrese Halliburton or, you know what I mean? Dave Calabro, and then Derek and I walk out, and they've got to be thinking, wait a minute. I thought this was supposed to be a big event, right?
Did you happen to see mass exits to the door?
I did not see any mass exits to the door, fortunately, because they locked the doors because they wanted everybody to stay inside and auction on the dessert. The cool thing about it, there were, I think, 40 tables, and each table, they had a silent auction for each table to win the right to be the first one to select the dessert for your table. And they had just unbelievable desserts. And our table came in third. We had Portia go up and pick, and she picked a fabulous kind of a red velvet cake that I was in charge of divvying up the slices for everybody. That was a disaster. One of them completely fell off and broke into about 6 pieces, and then Derek got that piece. And at the end, we had about 4 or 5 pieces left over, and the rest of the table agreed with me and said, you know what, Portia, you can take this home to the rest of your family. And so she took the cake home, since she was the one that picked it out. So it was a lot of fun. Bob Kravitz, by the way, had interesting perspectives on Jonathan Taylor. We're going to find out whether or not Jonathan Taylor is going to play on Sunday, but probably not before the end of today's show. But Bob joins us to talk about that and more, and he does so next.
Fall in
107.5 The Fan.
Halfway through the 2 o'clock hour. Jake Query here along with Jimmy Cook and Eddie Garrison. It is Query & Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Joining us now, the guy that I have long said is probably the most connected writer when it comes to Indianapolis sports. Joining us on the program, we will let you know how you can read his work at Substack. Bob Kravitz joins us. And Bob, I thought you had a really interesting column about Jonathan Taylor and, you know, kind of the topsy-turvy nature of this, right? Because I think you and I both probably would have guessed a month ago maybe that we would not be at this point where he may be playing on Sunday. We'll see on that. But I'll begin with this, and then we'll kind of go backwards towards your column. Do you think we will see Jonathan Taylor as recently as this Sunday?
I don't think so. I think his ankle is going to continue to give him problems. You know what I'm saying? I haven't checked out his ankle, but yeah, what I'm saying is I don't think he wants to play football for the Indianapolis Colts. And that being said, he may not feel like he's quite ready to play. I'd be a little surprised if he plays on Sunday, but you know, I don't feel like I've had a real good feel for this whole thing from the very beginning. Like you said, I really felt he would never play football again for the Colts. I thought it was a done deal. The fact that there's a possibility is a little surprising to me.
Is there the possibility, Bob, that the Colts are bringing him back into the mix, getting him conditioned to play strictly because they want to be able to showcase to other teams that he has value so they can flip him? Or do you think they're saying, look, he's under contract, we're going to ride it out?
Right. I think it's the latter. I think they're saying, hey, you know, you put your name on the dotted line and you are going to perform for us, and that's just the way it is. I don't think it has anything to do with showing the rest of the league that he can still play. I mean, look, it's not like he's coming back from a torn Achilles. He's coming back from an ankle debridement, which is a 2 to 4 week recovery period. So I don't think he needs to prove anything to anybody. I mean, you know, even in a bad year, he still averaged 4.5 yards per carry. So I think the whole league knows what Jonathan Taylor is about, and it's just a matter of getting him on a contract that he feels comfortable with.
So, Bob, would it surprise you more if he played over the next 3 weeks, or if he was just in uniform on the sidelines and or a healthy scratch?
Boy, I would be surprised if he played today, or if he played on Sunday, excuse me. I'd be surprised if he played Sunday, but I think everybody's just trying to buy time at this point. I think he's trying to buy time. I think the Colts are trying to buy time so they can make a trade by the trade deadline. So I'd be surprised if he played this weekend, but I'm sure that's going to blow up in my face too.
Bob, let's go back to this. I thought you had an interesting column yesterday, or I think it was last night when you wrote it, and we'll get to, by the way, how not only the cool benchmark you've gotten to with your column, the musings of an old sports writer, but how people can get on board with that and read your work. But one of them, in his first media session in months, a smiling Jonathan Taylor digs deep to say nothing. Elaborate on that, because I'm not saying that I disagree with you in any way, shape, or form.
Well, he tried to make the case that this whole thing, the last 6 months, 5 months, whatever it's been, has been about his health. And we all know that that's just a blatant lie is what it is. I mean, this whole thing has been about his contract. He basically fluffed off every question about the fraught relationship between himself and the Colts. He blew off everything that had to do with his contract, with trade. You know, he was talking like trade. You know, what are you talking about? Relationship? I'm like, come on, don't mess with our intelligence. And we're not the smartest kids in the class, but you know, don't do us like that. And I just found the whole thing very distasteful.
You know, the interesting thing is, if you were to nitpick it, which I will, if Jonathan Taylor wants to say that the reason he wasn't out on the field is because it was about his health and trying to get healthy, that's all well and good. but then shouldn't he be demerited from a character standpoint of trying to shop damaged goods to the rest of the league?
Yeah, you can make that point. Look, the league knows what the story is here. I mean, we've seen players do this before. This was a hold-in. Now he's back, sort of, kind of. I just thought it was such an interesting press conference, if that's what you want to call it. It was 11 minutes and 46 seconds, mostly of nothing. But I did think he said the one thing where he made it clear what his position is, and that is when he said, "I'm right here now," or something along those general lines. He did not commit to this team long term, nor should he. If he feels that he's being held hostage, if he feels that he's being mistreated, then he should do everything in his power to get out of Dodge.
Bob Kravitz is our guest. You can subscribe to his work on Substack, Musings of an Old Sports Writer. Nice enough to take some time with us here on Query and Company. Bob, what have been your early returns on Anthony Richardson to this point?
I've been really impressed. I thought that he would have these wild swings in his play, but he's been, very consistent. He's made the big play that we were kind of that we haven't seen around here in Lord knows how long, really since Andrew Luck. I've been really impressed by his pocket presence of all things. He seems to have an understanding. He's got that internal clock in his head, and he knows when to move, how to move, and when to get rid of the football. And I have nothing but good things to say about him. He's been great in the community, doing community things. So, no complaints at all. I thought that he would really, really struggle, and I think he'll still have some of those games where we go, what in the heck was that? But so far, so good.
Bob, this is going to sound like a weird question, but you've been around this in covering teams and, different eras of Colts football. While it is fabulous to see Anthony Richardson, immediately kind of take like a duck to water to an extent. I mean, there haven't been a whole lot of learning curves before our very eyes, but and I think to this point they've been more competitive than people expected. But is there a danger in the Colts getting too greedy and pushing in too early with this roster like they did in the Andre Johnson, Frank Gore, were all chips in era?
Oh, yeah. It makes – I think this is a – it's not like basketball where you have these long, periods of time where you're rebuilding. But I do think this is at least a 2-3 year type of thing where they could really be a team, where they're a team that starts looking for players who might be that last piece. Yeah, I think it's way too early for that. I realize everybody in the AFC South is 2-2. But I think over time Jacksonville is going to establish itself, and the idea that the Colts would be in position for a playoff berth is a little foreign to me, a little too far out there.
Bob, we acknowledged earlier in the show that it's probably too early for these conversations, but it feels like we're getting into territory in Shaq Leonard's career where maybe injury-prone is going to be a narrative that is not just a narrative, but is backed by factual instances. When you look at the crystal ball with where things stand, we were observing his contract. It's a $20 million cap hit next year, $8 million in dead cap if they were to move on. Are we even close to those type of conversations yet?
Oh, I think we're there. In fact, I really need to write about it soon. But I kind of want to give. The other day, Gus Bradley was saying that they're hoping to get him up to speed by November, and I don't know how he feels about that. I haven't talked to him about it, but it's going to take some time if he's ever going to come back. And it's sad because he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. Make no mistake about it. I still remember that game where he jumped out at us all against Washington in D.C. And I think he had 18 or 21 tackles that day. I thought, my God, this guy is incredible. It would be a shame if injuries take away from what was going to be a great career. It still could be. I'm not going to count the guy out, but I do think internally they're looking at his play and his development and saying, do we bring him back next year? And I think the answer probably, unless he has this incredible renaissance, the answer is probably no.
Bob, are you excited for the Pacers year? I mean, they're underway right now. They're starting practice.
I really am. I went to their media day, and this is going to be a really intriguing team that's going to score just a ton of points. I don't know if they can stop anybody. They gave up. They were 29th in the league last year in points allowed. I think it was 119 and a half. They seem to feel that if they can cut 3 or 4 points from that, become a team somewhere in the middle of the pack, that they can be a playoff team. I like the fact they added Jim Boylan to the staff. I think he'll help. And I just think it's upon every one of these guys. And I think Bruce Brown is a really good defender. I think it's just up to these guys to make that commitment to playing defensively and playing well and rebounding too. That's another area where they need to get a lot better.
Bob, I want to go back to when we first – Bob Kravitz is our guest on the hotline. I want to go back to when we first had you on. You were just starting the Musings of an Old Sports Writer on Substack, which what I like about it is, it kind of is like an area for you to just run free, right? I mean, you're the editorial control, so you can write what you want to write when you want to write it. I know that it's gone well for you. I wanted you to kind of fill us in on the people that have helped you out with that. By that I mean I think you probably want to thank a lot of people who have bought into it, and then also
Absolutely. How
people can continue to read your work.
Well, it's been unbelievably humbling. When the thing happened with the Athletic, I thought, what am I going to do? I thought I was going to drive a car, be a barista, something. I didn't know what I was going to do, and some people got me lined up with this with the Substack. And it's been absolutely fantastic. I went over 600 paid subs yesterday, so that's pretty good for 3 months' work. And if people want to read, it's bobkravitz.substack.com. And I tweet out my stories and put it on Facebook, and my daughter puts it on Instagram because I have absolutely no idea how to work Instagram. Yeah, it's been very humbling, very gratifying, and I feel like I've got I won't say a second career. It's more like an eighth.
And that includes the Dopey report card after each and every game, which is a fan favorite.
Absolutely.
And then just simply the musings, which are kind of like brain droppings from Bob Kravitz. Bob, I will leave you with this. I know I had told you about this on New Year's Eve at the Slippery Noodle, but I am not going to be in town. Coincidentally enough, I'm going to be in your old stomping grounds of Long Island coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow on October 20th. But on October 20th, so I'm going to say this to you, for you, Bob, and anybody listening, there is no better place to be in Indianapolis on just the start of a crisp fall night than the Rathskeller Beer Garden. And Michael Weir, my buddy, and your buddy Bob that we went to go see Bruce Springsteen with, his band, The Elect, which is the best local band in Indy, will be playing October 20th at the Rathskeller Beer Garden. So even though I'm going to be in your old stomping grounds, I'm going to ask that you have yourself a large beer for me and go watch Michael play.
It's the very least I could do.
Well, we appreciate that. Bob, a pleasure as always, and certainly look forward to continuing to reading, in particular, your Dopey report card about the game coming up on Sunday with the Tennessee Titans. Appreciate the time.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
That's Bob Kravitz. Again, if you're the 20th, by the way, you been to the beer garden, Jimmy?
Rathskeller? Yes, I have.
The best, man.
Phenomenal. Yep.
Just the best. Michael's up there playing, and you're looking in the background. You can see the skyline, and it's like, man, life is good. Life is good. We'll come back, get some of Jimmy's picks, and give you our pick for the weekend as well.
I'm not a athlete. This is my way. This is how I win.
Today's plays of the day focused on the weekend slate versus college football. We'll take Missouri plus 5.5 over LSU. Also going to take Notre Dame lay the 6 statement win for the Irish against Louisville. And this reads like an ugly game. We're going to play it like an ugly game. Under 38.5, the total of Purdue and Iowa. In the NFL, moneyline bets first. Chiefs over the Vikings. Bengals, if not now, when? Over the Cardinals. 49ers on Sunday Night Football, I beg your pardon, against the Cowboys. And lay the 5.5 on the Buffalo Bills. The 9:30 game across the pond against the Jaguars.
And Wyoming's going to beat Fresno State. Paul, the director of Giddiness. Paul, we're up against it. I apologize, but in the last minute, wanted to get you in. What's up?
Not much. I'm going to make this quick then.
Are you giddy today, Paul?
I'm always giddy.
Good, I like that.
That's the way to be.
Uh-huh.
The backside defensive end has to stay home against the Titans. Every time the Titans have beaten us, there's been 1 or 2 plays where they followed Derrick Henry down the line, and Ryan Tannehill has play action and bootleg to the naked side wide open to complete a pass for a touchdown. The backside defensive end stays home. The Colts will win this game, and I do think Jonathan Taylor's going to play and put us some decent yards this game.
No Kwity Paye, by the way. We do know that is out. Paul, your mentality and your giddiness in general kind of exude exactly what it looks like outside. You are constantly sunny, man. Have a great weekend, all right?
You as well, my brother. Thank you, Jake. Have a great weekend.
That's Paul, the director of giddiness for the program. Real quick, I wanted to squeeze in before we get to scores, predictions for the game on Sunday. You guys both are going to be working tonight. The fun just begins. Crisp night, high school football. Eddie, you are where?
I will be at Beech Grove for Triton Central and the Hornets.
Okay, and that game will be found where?
IndianaHighSchoolSports.com.
Okay. Jimmy?
Rivalry week. I'll be at the friendly confines of Bob Tully Field on the campus of Roncalli High School, Roncalli Cathedral. RoncalliMediaNetwork.com. It is indeed. You can get that one there or on the Roncalli High School YouTube channel.
Okay, final minute before we hand it off to John. Score predictions for Sunday. I believe this is last week we kind of got hurt because they asked us our predictions and then we found out all the injuries, right? And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I probably would have changed that. But injury standpoint looks good now because we know, as we said, Kwity Paye's out, Bernard Ryman's out, but Jonathan Taylor's available. Ryan Kelly is available. Who else was available, Eddie?
To be determined on Jonathan Taylor, but
but I mean,
in terms of availability, only Ryan Kelly.
Okay,
that was questionable. Buckner will be available, obviously.
DeForest Buckner, a limited participant Thursday. I didn't see today's angle if he was limited or not.
Score prediction, Jimmy Cook.
This is a big one because the Jaguars loom, but I think the Colts get it done 23-21. Colts.
Score prediction, Eddie
Garrison.
I
have Colts 20, Titans 13.
I think the Colts are going to score some points. I don't know if Taylor plays or not, but I do like Richardson's, his ability. We saw against the Rams. He really hit a groove there in the second half. I say they score 27. I think Tennessee has, if you get down early, you could be in trouble because Derrick Henry can salt clock away, but I'll say Colts win it, and I'll say it's going to be 27-16.
Clean sweep.
We will talk about it all on Monday. Mike Chappell will join us as well. You folks have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you out and about this weekend, and we will talk to you at noon. John is up next.